After 13 years on YouTube, Mike Corey, aka Fearless and Far, has cultivated a community of nearly 3 million subscribers.
Let's go, Mike.
Mike's a biology graduate turned travel host for the show Uncharted Adventure, and he genuinely never turns down an adventure.
From trading a crocodile for a bed in the Congo to living with the death tribe of Indonesia, raiding a baboon camp with hunter-gatherers in Tanzania,
I told them that I have a worm, and they lost their minds.
getting shot at in Satan's castle, spending 24 hours with the ostrich-footed tribe of Zimbabwe, and even stealing scrap metal with African pirates.
We genuinely mean it when we say he just doesn't say no to an adventure.
How many days of the year do you have diarrhea?
I have diarrhea now.
All in all, Mike's curiosity has led him to experiences and locations that most people would avoid. But here's what might surprise you.
Fearless and Far, my online alias, is not because I am fearless. I am perhaps one of the more fearful people.
Today's episode is all about fear.
Fear is a compass. If you dial it in and head towards it, the treasures of the world lay themselves at your feet. But that's a really hard thing to do.
We'll also talk about how a shy kid from Canada ended up beating Martha Stewart and Zac Efron for a daytime Emmy. The battle between science and spirituality, how Mike prepares for these insane adventures, and how attending our friends Raya and Louis' wedding allowed him to see a different way of existing.
If someone watches and follows you, I'm not sure they would know that.
But that's one thing you don't see generally in my videos.
Let's get to the root of Mike McLeod Corey.
Welcome back to Reroot, everyone. Today we're joined with Fearless and Far, Mike McLeod Corey. Eamon was just saying that you're his favorite YouTube channel. I have only spent the last couple of hours, weeks, getting to know you. And I said this off the pod, but genuinely, thank you for what you're doing. I feel as though the world needs more opportunities to come up against our own beliefs and to be able to be challenged with what we think is normal or, you know, how we should be living. And honestly, it gives me goosebumps because what you're doing is exposing us to the reality of life and the human experience. And you're doing it in a way that really you embody it and you bring us on this journey that is, for many of us, most of the world will never have these experiences. But because you are so embodied in the experience, we are having that experience. So thank you.
Thank you. And it's very perceptive of you because on the surface, I get labeled reckless and just another like crazy bro doing crazy travel stuff. But I take it all very, very seriously.
Yeah.
And I don't think people notice that in the beginning, but if you watch a few videos, we really make sure to introduce characters, to tell the full story, not make any judgments, not come in with any perceptions of how a certain tribe does something or a certain person does this when it could be quite shocking. You know what I mean? They could be, for example, like slaughtering an animal for a sacrifice in a very grotesque way that could be considered, from our cultural lens, we're gifted a lens basically, right? We grow up in a place, for me, backwoods Canada, New Brunswick, right? And we eat certain things, we do certain things, other things we don't do, right? We pray to a certain God, and this is how the world is. And you go somewhere else and it's completely different. But then you realize that who's right, who's wrong. You know, there's less people in Canada than there is in India, and they think eating cows is bad, and we eat cows here. So who's right at the end of the day? And so if you go into these travel experiences saying, I'm just going to learn everything I can, then it allows you to, first of all, if you're not judging, you're allowing yourself to go deeper as well. And no matter if you're in Canada having Thanksgiving dinner or you're in Angola, you know, eating boiled gazelle, they still take all of the pride and all of the love into making the food. And if it's not your cup of tea, like imagine someone coming over for Thanksgiving dinner or something and not having the turkey, even though they traveled all that way and they wanted to see your culture, because it's gross or, you know, weird in their culture. They might not tell you it's offensive, but they're going to be a little bit hurt because it's food. It's great, right? And so with Fearless and Far, the whole idea is just to get in as deep as possible, sometimes a little bit too deep, and, you know, have the most authentic experience, because for the people around the world, we're just fed judgments online and in the media all of the time. And how the human mind works is we just take that all in. We're supercomputers when it comes to risk and problems, right? We love to analyze all the risk and make decisions. And so when we're just flooded with all negative data points, then we see the world in a negative way. And so one of the goals of the channel is to show positive data points. So yeah, they might eat animals a different way or pray to a different god or do things that like file their teeth down with knives into points. When you hear the story why, and you meet the people, and they're not evil, right? They're just like you. They've got a couple kids. They're just trying to provide for their family. You realize we're all just humans, and we have different belief systems. No one's right, no one's wrong. And that's really the ethos of the channel.
What would the little Mikey at 13 say if you told him one day you're going to be doing some of the most unique travel experiences on the world?
My notes say do not call him Mikey, so you should have really done your research.
Were you called Mikey at a young age?
Why did you don't put Mikey?
I don't know. Emma told me don't call him Mikey and like star. I'm like, that is so weird. And I thought it would never come up, but of course
I just figured little Mikey. I would never call you Mikey.
My mom calls
IRL.
me Mikey. That's the
See, there you go. I knew.
That's the only, and sometimes I get the like press email or like brand deal. I'm like, hey, Mikey. And it's like, you don't have one person.
Not there.
One person.
Not only that, but it's like, we're not doing this deal.
Yeah, exactly. It's over. If they get a response even.
Seriously.
Right. Yeah, I was the shyest kid ever. I would think I would be in the top 0.01% of like people who would never be on camera. So I had a great time growing up for the most part in Eastern Canada. It was great, but some certain things in school happened and it made me completely just honestly phobic of being the center of attention.
Can we know what those are?
We certainly can.
Yeah.
I was always like a bit of a quiet kid. I loved nature at a very young age. I think it was my father would show me, he'd flip over rocks, and especially at the beach. So in New Brunswick, we have a place called the Bay of Fundy, which, highest tides in the world. I think it's like 15 meters of vertical water. So like 45 feet, like twice a day. It is an incredible thing. And with that, it's like a giant lung. It brings in all of this deep, cold, nutrient-rich water from the ocean, and it feeds this entire ecosystem. So it's one of the most not biologically diverse places, but biologically dense, meaning per square foot of water or a spare foot of seafloor, it is just filled with life, right? We'd go to the beach there, very cold water, and flip over rocks in tide pools. And there'd be like crabs and all these weird critters like amphipods. And my dad would show me how cool these things were. And then I'd go back to school and be like, hey, check out this salamander. And people would be like, oh, it's so weird. It's so gross. And they'd start throwing these labels, weird and gross and dangerous if it's a snake and all this kind of stuff. So from a young age, I was very curious. And I've realized the through line through a lot of my travels is proving to people how the world really is. So now it's countries and cultures, but back in the day it was animals, and that's what got me started, this curiosity.
Did the label of weird and different also become your label?
Yeah, no, okay. I was that because again, I was always quite quiet, and I was never the guy taking up any space, right? Like a bit of like a nerdy kind of kid obsessed with animal books. Like I had all the National Geographics and stuff like that. But what happened is I was in grade 4, and there was a couple things that happened where I had a teacher who picked on me, I think because I was quiet. And one day we had like a death of a pet, and went in there, and I was quite sad, and she didn't know why I was sad, and she brought me up in front of the class and like made me explain, and I got really emotional. And then later that year I got framed on the playground, and then from there the entire school hated me for the rest of the year for something I didn't really even do. So the quiet kid then becomes hated by the whole school for doing something horrendous that then, it just wasn't the right time.
Wow.
And so when do you ever learn how to be in front of a group? You never get taught. Like, do you get taught how to give a presentation, or they give you a topic and you show up there and you blurble out some words, and then the class kind of half-heartedly claps and you go sit down? And unless you're a class clown, you just get like a C, right? Mm. So that,
and even the class clowns are being the class clown because they are insecure and like trying to mask that they don't know what they're doing either, right?
Yeah. And so at that age, I was quite it was very difficult for me to be in front of a crowd. Mm. And my journey from there to now has been like the greatest adventure, which was eventually learning that fear is a compass, and that if you dial it in and head towards it, the treasures of the world lay themselves at your feet. But that's a really hard thing to do. And
especially in grade 4.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, what?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of grade school, a quiet, weird kid that I had a couple friends, but we were all kind of like the weirdos, you know what I mean? But with that, there is the beauty, right? Because I'm a firm believer that the best men or the best women become what they lacked. So wherever there was that gaping hole, if you can dial that in, and it's hard to do because it feels so much aversion to going into the deep, yucky stuff, right? But if you can dial in and go that way, your world completely changes. And so Fearless and Far, my online alias, is not because I am fearless. I am perhaps one of the more fearful people that I don't want to say I've ever existed, but like I've had a lot of fear growing up.
Wow.
And so my journey through fear has been the greatest journey. And now my greatest gift is trying to help people with that feeling, because no matter if you're traveling the world or just trying to navigate your hometown, there's fear is this insidious little thing. And there's big fears like fear of heights that scream at you, right? Like, oh my God, don't go near the cliff. But then there's like procrastination, which is a sneaky little insidious fear that will mess up your whole life. And you might not label it as fear, but those are the termites in your foundation that wreck you completely. And you don't know that you're actually afraid, right? It could be perfectionism and all these different things. It's still a version of fear, right?
So when you decide to dive into this concept of making yourself even more vulnerable, open yourself up to the world, posting internet videos, was there a point where you felt like you've overcome that fear?
I don't think you do.
Public speaking.
I don't think you ever overcome the fear. I just think when it shows up at your door with a machete screaming at you, you're like, hey, I know. Good to see you. I knew you were coming. Have a seat. Let's go, you know? And if anything, it's a motivator. And there's a lot of little tricks. Like one that I used for a long time is whenever I felt the fear, I'd go, yes.
Bring it on.
Yes. And I'd like shake it out. And that, because fear and excitement are biochemically very similar, right? You still like your heart starts to beat and you start to feel the light. And so if you just change that wiring, your brain starts to hold on. Am I fearful? Am I excited? And that helped a lot. And realizing that it actually helps you because you work harder, you know, like if you're a bit nervous to do something, you're going to work harder than someone who is just a natural. And then you do that for 20 years in my case, and you become better than average because you know how bad you suck, basically. You know?
It's so powerful to hear that Fearless and Far comes up against fear. And the quote that I found was like, I told you earlier, so much of learning about you like spoke to me deeply. You said your fear is a liar, a bully, and a thief. It knows exactly how to deceive you. It will push you around and steal everything you could become. Like literal goosebumps through my body. Most run from it. The great walk towards it. You must use it as your compass, which you just said again. Let's go into like fear being this liar, because I also am of the belief we're operating either in fear or in love. And that actually fear is just the absence of love. It's not even like the spectrum is like your fear or your love. And the way you were saying, perfectionism is fear. Shame is fear. All of these states of survival, I'll call them, I believe are when you operate in fear. And instead you can open your heart and you can recognize, hey, like I'm about to enter this world and this tribe and this thing. Or it could be as simple as like, I'm afraid to have this conversation that needs to happen that I know is going to expose me, and, you know, and I'm just afraid of not being accepted. And, or you can lead with love. And I just want to go into fear being a liar and how if you follow it, just go even deeper. Following fear feels so wrong. We say yes. What else do we do? Like, how else do you actually just go do the thing? How do you get yourself ready to go to the jungle when you have no clue what's about to happen?
Or even on any level, right? If someone's listening to this and they're scared to talk to their boss.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a muscle. Fear is a muscle that if you don't use it, it'll atrophy, just like your biceps if you don't go to the gym. And if you're not consistently doing it and consistently challenging it, it'll take over your life and it'll consume you, right? It often lies to you. Actually, 90% of the time, it lies to you. And I get asked all the time, well, how do you know which fears to chase? But I call bullshit every single time. You know when you're playing games with yourself. I'm not, and so when people say, oh, should I jump off a cliff, Mike? I don't even acknowledge the question, because I just feel like you know deep down exactly which fears are bullshit and which ones are legit. And even then, if you're afraid of the ocean, get a swimming guide, like you don't have to jump in the deep end right away. And the hardest thing though is no one wakes up, watches a motivational YouTube video, and then changes their life. Unfortunately, life has to come, kick you in the crotch real hard, and then at a point of desperation, the human soul, for some of us, you decide in that moment something has to change. And then if you have, whether it be the bravery or just the background or the I don't exactly know the right combination, but some people, once their face in the dirt, decide I have to change, and they do. And other people hit rock bottom and maybe stay there, right? But I think you do have to get there. And that's what happened to me as well. But luckily in life, there's plenty of opportunity to hit rock bottom. So from there, it's just knowing the mindset of every great person ever had a rock bottom that then they bounced from and then became something great.
There's always those two options.
And by going to the bottom, don't you feel as though you can feel the light that much greater? Like, to really know darkness, I think is the gift of it is to know the light, I think. If you're kind of always even, which I don't think anyone really ever is, but if you go there and you face it and you come up against that fear, then the experience you're about to have is 10 times more enhanced because you overcame yourself.
Yeah.
To have that moment,
I also really like what you said about the physical shake of like fear's coming up. Okay, let's go, let's battle. And animals do that too, right? After they've been chased, the deer's been chased, they literally shake. Yeah, they shake it off. And we humans don't do that. We store that energy, and it turns to stress and survival. Can you give us an example of the last time you had to shake it off?
You guys might have noticed that Eamon and I have been experimenting with our styles a little bit. I just wanted to shout you out and say how fire you look today.
Thank you,
And a piece of that is accessorizing. So we like necklaces and we love a good pair of sunnies. This is where Gooder comes in because they have high quality, 100% polarized sunnies for just starting at $25.
Yeah, I don't know how they did this, but don't sleep on Gooder.
It's affordable. And it allows you to switch up your style and not feel like crazy obsessed with one pair of sunnies that might break if you're traveling or playing pickleball or sweating and they fall off, you know? I said pickleball.
You need a pair of sunnies.
Apparently we love pickleball. We also love being the kind of cabin where people can come and if they forgot a jacket, like grab one of our $20 jackets we got from the...
I feel like sunnies are a nice thing for that because it's like, you do want to get out of your comfort zone of trying on different things. So we do have like a stack of sunnies there that people can try out. And they're like, oh, I'm going to take these for the boat
like a
ride.
Little sleek pair, something a little more vibrant and colorful, or just like your everyday pair of sunnies.
Plus, once you go polarized, it's very hard to go back. So the fact that these are affordable and polarized is a game changer. So if you need a new pair of sunnies, Gooder is giving Reroot listeners free shipping. You can go to gooder.com/reroot and use the code Reroot for free shipping.
Gooder offers a 30-day money-back guarantee and 100% satisfaction. They also have a 1-year warranty. So again, that's gooder.com/reroot and you can use code Reroot for free shipping.
Gooder, just the R.
Good R.
R.
Gooder.
Just so you know.
Like an Aussie would say, Gooder.
Get out, mate.
Dude, I shake it off before in the bathroom before the podcast. Like I always shake it off. But that's where that's the biggest. I'm trying to say here. When you feel that feeling, there's always a choice, and it's almost like the door to different dimensions opens up, and there's the dimension of you run from fear. Or you choose love and you lean into fear. And from there, the universe goes into fractals, and there's a version of you that said, yes, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to travel to Indonesia. Yeah. And there's a version that's like, you know what? Maybe it is too expensive. You know what? Maybe my mom doesn't want me to go. And literally, there's two people.
You told me you weren't spiritual before we started this podcast, but dude.
I just got spiritual like 3 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, so I learned that it makes sense knowing that you loved animals growing up, but you studied marine biology. So you're really rooted in science. And I have come to believe that science and spirituality coexist. It's all one and the same, in my opinion. Science sometimes is the way that we can use language to describe spirituality. You know, if you can measure someone's electromagnetic field, it sounds a lot less hippie than, oh, her aura or her, you know, it's like there are tools to help us understand as these monkey brains that we have that are quite limited, in my opinion. So you grow up.
We believe they're limited.
Exactly. We are unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
We grow up with science, and then what opens your mind to spirituality?
Right. So from growing up and seeing all these sea creatures, I loved the ocean. I loved animals. And that was the initial fuel to start traveling, was to meet these cool animal celebrities, like a real penguin or like a real chameleon. Like that's why I first started traveling. But coming from a scientific background, I was very skeptical of a lot of spirituality.
Did you grow up religious at all?
We went to church every Sunday until I was about 18. And both my parents came from spiritual backgrounds, but they weren't too. Their families were,
like
but
Catholicism or
no, just Christianity. Yeah. But I think they liked the ritual of it.
Yeah.
And so I've got 3 siblings, 4 kids. We get dressed up in our little kind of like cute little ties and stuff. We go to church and there's Sunday school, and it's just nice, right?
Yeah.
And it was never really pushed upon us. But like if you have a science mind, you start asking too many questions, and then things start to fall apart if you don't get the answers. And so I was probably atheist until I was around 25, 28. Then I became more agnostic when I started traveling. So I thought something was out there, but I didn't know what it was. And now my spirituality's changed quite a bit. And I would say that I definitely believe there is some sort of God out there, 100%. But people think science is a party pooper. It's there to like shit on the parade, but it's really not. It's just there to make sure we have proof. And it's not saying if there's no proof, it doesn't exist. Just saying, let's find some proof before we start touting it across the world. But after traveling so much, you see so much that just can't be explained. And using like the scientific mind that I got through my childhood, I think of other things. Like, are you familiar with humorism? Heard of that before? So only about 200 years ago, there was the scientific thought to why we got sick was that there was an imbalance in our humors. And we had 4 humors. It was like blood, bile, phlegm, and another one. And that's why bloodletting was a thing. So if you had I don't know, for example, like a stomach issue, okay, you have too much blood or something, and they'd literally cut your skin and help you bleed, right? And the same thing with phlegm, and same thing with bile. And so if you got sick, they thought it was an imbalance, so they would adjust those 4 fluids in your body. And then about 200 years ago, the story is kind of crazy. There was a guy who was working in a hospital, and there was people who were working in the morgue taking babies, in a morgue, handling dead bodies, and then going to where they have babies and delivering babies, and the child mortality rate was really, really high. And one guy's like, hold on a second, maybe there's something related by handling dead bodies and handling babies. And like, oh, you're crazy, bro. This is ridiculous. What are you talking about? It doesn't exist. He's like, there's something going on here. But they thought he was crazy. They took away his license, and he eventually died. But then years later, they're like, oh shit, germs are a thing. We didn't even know about, this is 200 years ago. We thought it was a fluid imbalance. But so he was the first person who started the train of thought, like maybe germs exist, because you can't see germs, especially back then. And so if that was only 200 years ago, that was a scientific fact, right? That it was an imbalance of blood and phlegm in your body. 200 years from now, what are we going to think is equal bullshit, right? And so when it comes to energy and the like collective mind of human, like there's something going on there that we think is total horseshit now, that in 200 years we're going to be like, oh, of course. Like, how did these cavemen in 2025 ever think that it was, we're all an independent species. We don't have a hive mind, So
before we started, you were talking about Raya Louis' wedding, kind of cracking you open, but we didn't get there because I wanted to save it for the pod. So you show up to this wedding that's a dry, vegan, week-long retreat, essentially, they hosted.
Yeah, and I had thought a lot about fear up until that point, because that wedding was 3-4 years ago or something, right? I had put a lot of time into understanding how fear controls all of our lives, right? But I'd never really done like
Breath work,
I'd
meditation.
never done breath work. I had done some meditation, for example, like kind of like the entry level stuff, but not breath work, especially like holotrophic breath work where you inhale, exhale, and they call it DMT breath work because they think that it releases DMT and you.
It totally does.
Yeah.
Your pineal gland. Are you familiar with your pineal gland?
Oh, very much.
Yeah.
We just can't dissect a human brain in the middle of the process. It's not really ethical.
But you can do like mapping of the brain and see that center light up. And that to me is like everything.
But again, like science is just there to let's have some proof.
Exactly.
And it's not saying it doesn't exist, but when there's enough anecdotal evidence, you have to at a certain point be like, there's something here.
Totally.
So at that wedding, the dry vegan wedding it was a week. It was the longest I'd ever gone.
Dry or vegan?
She's like, yep.
Yeah, exactly. It allowed it for a different kind of connection, because especially at a wedding, like alcohol helps so much. You're there, it's a bunch of people you don't know, you dance it out and stuff like that. But there was like my first ever men's circle, for example, where we all sat and said a little bit about ourselves. And there was my first ever intimacy training where I got to stare at a few different people in the eyes, like consistently for 3 minutes and talk about very intimate things. You know what I mean? And it's difficult with eye contact too, because when do you ever look at someone in the eyes for minutes?
I always try, but it freaks people out.
It freaks you out because they really are the windows to the soul, and you can hide in for the first 30 seconds, but you stare at someone, especially like for men, you don't make eye contact with men for minutes because it's almost confrontational, right? Like if you're in love with someone, you'd look at them in the eye for a while and that's fine, but not a stranger. But again, with the ethos of let's try everything, and like why don't I want to, right? I can say it's not for me, but like, come on, that's just fucking fear bullshit. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so much of that, it's not for me stuff. Like cooking isn't for me. It's because you're scared, right? You're scared to give love. You're afraid to be judged. And so I always self-analyze, why don't I want to do this? And 99.9% of the time, it's because of fear. And I'm like, no, Jesus, I'm Mr. Fearless and Far. So I'm going to eye gaze with this bro for 5 minutes.
He's so easy to convince to do things.
Yeah. So that wedding was because, I guess, of my attitude that I cultivated through travel, I went full in, and was heavily rewarded with an unlocking of a different part of being human that most people avoid, because we all just take all of our baggage and stuff it in our coats and just don't want to show it because we think we're all just unique little snowflakes. But yeah, your fear isn't unique. You know what I mean? We all share so many of the same struggles. And if you open up and really say, I'm struggling with anxiety or depression, or my father just died, I don't know what to do. And there's so many people who share, and then being able to get that off your chest and just unload those tons on your body just allows you to move through things. Because if you don't, you just sit there with that pressure, and then you start to either speak to yourself in a negative way, or you lash out at others, and it becomes this dark hole of just blackness and darkness, and everyone falls in the hole a little bit differently. But it's a very painful place to exist. And like you said, the opposite is love. And if you can find the love in everything, you can become a lighthouse. You can have a big beaming chest of light that, like a lighthouse, everyone gravitates around. Not just everyone, opportunities, like experiences all just seem to come because
you're a magnet. Yeah.
And that all starts through honesty and not running from fear. But again, it's not easy to do, right? It's not easy to do. So that wedding allowed me to really start to see a different way of existing, which was being open to everything and not trying to hide stuff in my deep, dark pockets, and how by putting it out there, you can live a much more free, beautiful life. And so from there, I came back with, like anything, you have an experience that changes deep foundational changes in your life. You don't really change the next day because we're creatures of routine. You go back to the same place, but the structure's changed a bit. And so then you start asking more questions, or a thought comes up and you're like, why am I thinking that? Or you start noticing people being a certain way. Or if someone, like for example, you're at a men's circle and you see someone who's maybe they're not talking very much, and you can tell they're holding some weight. Then you hear the weight, and maybe you're even judging them. Maybe they look like an asshole or something, and then you hear their story, and you're like, oh my god, that guy, like, has so much weight on his shoulders. Then you go see some random dude in the street who has a mean mug, and you're like, I know that mask. I know that mask. Or maybe you start to see it in yourself, like you have the mask on. And then, because there's only really so many ways a human being can get damaged. I mean, there's a billion ways, but there's definitely categories. And there's, again, categories of how we protect ourselves. Whether we, again, you become the class clown, like we said, where you're always trying to get the attention, or maybe you hide away. And a lot of the root causes are similar, on a similar spectrum. And so then after that, I went back and just slowly over years, and even up until now, have been just realizing there's a lot of growing that can happen in a soul. And I'm known as like Mr. Adventure, and I've gone to 100 countries to do some of the wildest stuff on the planet. But the biggest thing I've realized since then is the greatest adventure doesn't happen around the world. It happens right here and right here. And a lot of people going out there to do those big adventures, myself included, are trying to run from this adventure. And that's where the real growth happens.
And I just want to like say, from my female perspective, I think like when you're saying that maybe the men have anger and this and whatever. And so I was always kind of like, how could I be the problem? But I was the problem through perfectionism and not feeling whole within myself. So I'm like seeking validation, but couldn't even accept it as love because I didn't have enough love for myself. And that was so hard to come up against because I give love so freely. And then to come up against myself and realize, whoa, like you've been having this thought, that was so confronting to me. And then when I shared it with people, I could see how much fear it gave them, because it's like, if Bec is saying that and she shows up as this person who gives all this love and is, it freaks them out. It challenges their own. So I can imagine that for men looking at you, who is a man's man with the tattoos and the craziest life experiences and
lumberjack shirt.
I just think there's so much power in that. So thank you for being so open.
It's been difficult to share.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if someone watches and follows you, I'm not sure they would know that.
No, because I only really got into speaking about it in the past 2 years, year and a half. And generally the people who consume the content, they're open-minded for sure, because they're watching the content and we do all kinds of wild, crazy stuff. But it takes a special flavor of human to open up that dark box. And even the suggestion freaks people out, and they get real judgy and real name-cally. And for me, one of the more cathartic things that I did at one of these like retreats was just yell. Because I was never one to really get angry or yell. And human beings need to be able to feel the full spectrum. I was never an angry guy. But human beings need to feel anger and need to express anger sometimes, right? There's thresholds you don't. But being able to just like, sometimes it feels fucking good.
Yeah.
And you see really judgy comments on videos of this kind of stuff. It doesn't look... The transformation and the feeling you get in person doing these kinds of things doesn't translate to an Instagram reel. You know what I mean? Like, it just, and so you see all of the like, oh, it's a cult, or look at these freaks. And those are the people who need it the most, unfortunately. Right. And they've just, anything you resent in your life is exactly where you need to go.
Yes.
Right. Resentment is this like glaring red light of, I am so afraid to touch this thing. It presses all my buttons. I'm just going to hate it irrationally, and therefore not participate. I'm not going to participate because I can't handle it, so I'm going to hate it and I'm going to avoid it like the plague. And so you see people with these like deep-seated judgments towards a lot of self-development, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people, like, I've seen comments, I don't read these comments because it's like, Bec's in a cult now and it's like, why am I, then I have to go, so why am I letting that upset me? Because I have come up against myself and I've changed so much, and so I'm okay with that. I'm actually really happy with the evolution. And I know that the comments are always a reflection of where where they're at. It's not me. And that it's their own resistance to things. But it is interesting. Like, as soon as you change in someone's eyes, you're now in a cult and you're to be feared. And, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm just talking about more love, guys. just more love.
But they're little.
And I want to be in that cult if that's the cult, you
Exactly.
know? Like, come
Yeah.
on. Come on.
But it's really repelling, and that's been
Yeah.
my struggle too. Is I've started doing my own retreats where it's more adventure focused, but we dive into some of these processes and activities and rituals and ceremonies that I've come across to help you kind of open the box a little bit. And I've been called a cult as well. And oh, this guy's changed.
Can I join your cult?
Hey,
Let's
we're all.
do
I'd love to
it.
join as well.
Yeah.
I'll do a blood.
I was actually thinking maybe not in this moment, but I would love for you to guide us and through a little breath work.
Yeah.
What do you think? Or it's not for the cameras.
It wouldn't be for the
thing.
camera because the breath
Yeah.
work that I lead was the same one that I experienced at the wedding.
Okay.
And because I had dabbled with a little bit of hallucinogens at that point, had done ayahuasca in the Amazon, which was a good experience. I had one after that retreat that completely floored me for still to now. But what happened during that retreat is there was a girl and a guy who came, and they did a certain kind of breathwork they called holotrophic breathwork, which is basically like hyperventilating for an hour.
Is it like the 2 in, 1 out? Or
Just like
deep in, out? Oh, yeah.
in and out.
Yeah.
All through the mouth?
I don't think they put many rules and regulations on
You're
it,
just
or at
trying to
least I
pump.
stopped doing that because you don't want like, oh, am I doing it right to get in the way?
Right.
Yeah.
There's a certain technique to do it, but again, if like I want to be a Trojan horse. And what I mean by that is I want people to click on the channel, go on a cool adventure, and I just want to sneak in some stuff on the side.
Yeah.
I don't want to lead with it because it's too scary,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so the whole conquer your fears, nobody wants to conquer fear. They want to get more confident. They want to have, a life of their dreams. But if you brand it as, chasing your fear, which is a motto that I used to use and I don't use very much anymore, is because no one wants that, but they want confidence. And it's exactly the same thing. And so with the breath work, I don't want to market it too much as like get your demons out of the way. I want an adventure retreat, and then there'll be some fun little surprises in there. Because once people are there, like the testimonials we have from the first retreat are incredible, like profound, deep changes. And many showed up for an adventure. But again, the biggest adventure happens here. And so...
Was it only men?
No, it was both,
Okay.
yeah.
What was the split?
We had like 25. It was about 20 men, 5 women.
Cool.
Yeah. But dude, a quick sidetrack before we get back to the breath work is we were doing it in Mexico, near Valladolid, which is in the center of the Yucatan. Lots of cenotes, Mayan ruins. We do like Temazcal, like a Mayan sweat lodge.
So good.
Actually, there's a really great ayahuasca shaman that comes up, and we work with him too. So there's a lot of different ways to open the box. So we had done a lot of these powerful transformation techniques. Even like ice baths are really difficult if you've never done one before. So people showed up and they wanted an adventure, but a lot are a bit more reserved, and all of these things crack you open. And then on like the 3rd or 4th day of the 6-day retreat, we go to a cenote. So these big sinkholes that go down into pits of water. And this one was probably like 60 feet, like 18 meters from the top down to the water on the bottom. And there's a staircase that goes along the side, and we were swimming at the bottom. And then one of my facilitators is like an adventure guy, and he does like cliff jumping. And so he goes up and he does like an 18-meter cliff jump from the top into the water. And these people were like, nothing's going to stop me attitude from all of the challenges we had put. And we had some who had never cliff jump in their entire life start to go up the stairs to do an 18-meter cliff jump, which is insanity.
Yeah.
Even for someone who does a lot of cliff jumps, like 18 meters, 60 feet is a very high distance.
Are you, as the facilitator, getting a little nervous? At some
For
of these-
sure I am.
Yeah.
For sure. Because, I mean, there was another option there, like cliff jump, even like 3-4 meters is a high if you've never done it before.
Especially you can look at it and be like, I can do that. And then you get up to the top, you're
Yeah.
like, what the? It's different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so he went up, and then one of the attendees like, Mike, are you going to go? And I'm like, Jesus Christ. And then so one of the worst things you can do with fear in general is sit there and think about it. And so, especially with cliff jumps or with anything, the more you think, the more you get in your head, you just got to do. So you walk up, and I jumped, and then these people started to go, and there was this girl who was quite reserved, and she had a lot of really good breakthroughs. Goes up and jumps 18 meters, her first cliff jump ever.
Let's go. What's her name? Give her a shout.
Ashley. You're my
Fucking
hero, Ashley. That's amazing.
Yeah. And just seeing that transformation just gives me goosebumps too.
Yeah.
Because that's what I want.
Yes.
I want people to break through that threshold
Yeah.
and be able to feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And how powerful, we can go back to breath work, but I've been wondering, like, what's next, and like, what do I want to do? I guess it's like a big question, but to host a retreat and have like your community become physical, I think is very powerful.
Big
and
time.
it would be very powerful for us. We talk about it a lot. Eamon wants a community center. I'm much more drawn to like retreats. I think my fear is that I'm not, like, who am I to facilitate this kind of thing? It's got to work on it.
Perfectionism 101.
Exactly.
Yeah, me too.
And worthiness. Like, am I worthy of all these people coming and trusting me with their, you know?
Or just how much energy you put out, the drainage.
But I think in a case where I would be receiving so much if it's the right retreat for me, you know, because they're gonna come for the adventure and they're gonna know what they're kind of.
They're coming for you though too.
Anyways, I just think it's so cool that you've done it anyways. Because what another thing you were probably afraid to start doing.
Oh, for sure it was.
Yeah.
Because again, who am I? And I think anybody who gets into this kind of work, as far as like self-development, you're always like, there's so much more I can learn and grow, and there's like so many places to better myself, and I'm not perfect, so therefore who am I to help? And then you get in the bubble of seeing you're in a group of people who are all trying to improve themselves, and you kind of forget what it's like to never dabble in that world of self-improvement, where most of the world is. But whether you hang with friends who have similar ideas about life and self-improvement, or you're reading books, or you're even the algorithms on social media just feed you a bubble of what you want to see, and you forget anything that exists outside of that. And you forget that most people have never touched it, right?
Yeah, with Habit, we host ice bath meetups in Lake Ontario. And it's so cool. We all, stop and talk about why we're here. And everyone just wants to, get out of their comfort zone a little bit, try something new. And it's cool to have like-minded people all there up against something.
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine on a week-long retreat, just the connections they probably make between each other and the friendships and relationships, how that grows.
And that group courage you get too, right? Where everyone's there cheering you on, and you see someone else who you might perceive as more shy than you, for example, do something and you see them struggle, and then persevere, and then the whole group erupts.
Yeah.
And then when do you ever, like, very rarely do you get strong data points of positivity for struggle. Another thing we did during the retreat was we made people, it was a bit of a devilish plan where on the first day, with no prep, it's like, all right, guys, we're here, we're in the circle. In 3 minutes, we're doing a talent show. You're not allowed to leave the circle, go.
Oof.
And my intention was to scare people.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately there was, I need to go to the bathroom. And it's like, no, we're staying here. No one's allowed to leave. And all of the questions, like, I need to get my tennis. No. Like, we're staying in the circle. You have 3 minutes. Now you have 2.5 minutes, by the way. Get ready. And it was me, because I know what it's like to just have like a bone-shaking fear of what am I going to do. But the reality is no one cares.
Yeah.
Right? You can go up there and like, I can't do the little thing. Like, do this thing, for like a minute or like 30 seconds. And that's it, right?
Yeah.
But the idea there was to have people go up and then absolutely shower them with praise for just being in front of a group. Because from my experience, you go through grade school and you do it, again, like I said, presentation, no one gives a shit. It just reinforces the negative. I didn't do as good as Susie and therefore I suck, right? But being able to give someone the gift of praise, doing something that was absolutely horrifying, because it's never as worse as you think it is.
Yeah.
That was my intention. And that's something I learned from Toastmasters, which is a public speaking group. You go up and on the first day you have to give a talk. And then you're so nervous because you don't have anything prepared. And then at the end, everyone erupts in like a standing ovation. And that changed my circuitry about who I am and what I can do, because I never had that. Most people don't have that, right? A standing ovation from putting themselves out there.
It's not the content, it's the courage to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And what would life look like if we all just celebrated everyone more, celebrated ourselves more, But just like, wow, that's so incredibly powerful to think about, you know?
Yeah, I look back on like my childhood, and it's usually those team sports or team activities where you start to get that confidence, right? You score your first goal, the team's all giving you high fives. Like those little moments, I think are a lot more lost as you get older.
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And to prioritize a week to get away, meet a bunch of random people, and then they're cheering you on all week as you're overcoming yourself. I want to go.
But like, that's beautiful. And we can create that in our lives.
Yeah,
I can
exactly.
cheer on Odette because she's so friggin' awesome and beautiful. And and I can thank Andrew and celebrate Andrew for how he shows up for us. And then it comes full circle. And if you give it and you are open and feel worthy of receiving it, you're the magnet, you know? So let's just do more of that.
Love it.
And like
What
you were
you're teaching
mentioning,
me.
the in-person element
Yeah.
is so important, because we can make a video, you and I or whatever, and it gets 1 million views, and that's a really cool number, and there might be some really nice comments, and maybe you'll get a couple emails.
Yeah.
But that is it's such a pale comparison to being there, seeing
Even
it,
one
feeling
person.
it. Just even one person.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly it.
So can we talk about some crazy stuff you've done?
Yeah.
I have a question for you and for everybody. Have you ever signed up for something, forgotten about it after the trial period ends, and then you're charged month after month after month?
Yes.
The subscriptions are there, but you're not using them. In fact, I just learned that 85% of people have at least one paid subscription going unused each month. Thanks to Rocket Money, I can see all of my paid subscriptions in one place and cancel the ones I'm not using anymore. And now we're saving more money. They also make it so easy to cancel because they cancel it for you.
It's pretty amazing. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings.
I know that sounds crazy, but they actually alert you when a bill payment is increased, and then will let you know, and you can choose for them to try to negotiate it for you. They deal with the customer service, which is the thing I hate the most in the world. And customer service people, you're amazing. I just do not like being on the phone for hours trying to negotiate things. So Rocket Money will actually negotiate your bills for you.
Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. That's a lot.
So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/reroot today.
That's rocketmoney.com/reroot.
rocketmoney.com/reroot. Go.
rocketmoney.com/reroot.
And what keeps you on that path? Like, let's just list off some things, right? You know, finding some of the most remote tribes on the world and going and living and hunting with them.
Nose piercing, right? Like,
Oh,
which
yeah.
side?
One of my
Where?
favorites-
Where? It looks healed.
No, it was right through the septum.
Oh.
And it took them 15 minutes
It's just over and over again. They couldn't get it through.
twisting and taking it out another side and twisting. And
Oh my god.
the funniest part about that adventure, that was in Zimbabwe with the Batonga tribe. And it was done by these like sassy 70-year-old grandmas who smoke pot all day and like go and like they're just the most hilarious bunch. And I had the false idea that if you have a nose piercing, you know how to give a nose piercing. So these ladies all had these little reeds through the bottom part, and I'm a really big fan of finding rites of passage, because I think we have completely removed them from society, the modern worlds, but pretty much every traditional tribe or remote tribe or people who are mostly untouched by the Western world have rites of passage, both for women and men, and they're different. And so when I can find one, I like to show it because I want people to start to realize they should create their own, either through travel or there's a million ways you can do it. But when does a boy become a man, right? When does a girl become a woman? With women, I guess you could say that like menstruation could be one. Also having a child is probably a pretty big rite of passage. But as men, it's not so clearly defined when you become a man. You know what I mean? And so I love finding those, and I always try to participate if I can. Sometimes it's very sacred, right? But for the ones where I can try, I always try. That one was, I don't want to say a bad idea, but in my head I was like, it'd be cool to rock a nose piercing for a little bit. But
Did he get infected?
so you do see the crazy things I do. So I did that in Zimbabwe. I also went to the Mercy tribe in Ethiopia. They're called one of the most dangerous tribes in the world. They all have got like big AK-47s, and they live in the Omo Valley, where all of like you ever see like the big lip plates that the women wear, like in the bottom.
Yes.
The gap. It's like a big hole.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the Mercy tribe. There's a few like subgroups, but that's where I was. And from there, they also do scarification. So they don't tattoo themselves this way, but they tattoo themselves through with a blade or like a thorn, and they rub ash in there, and so it heals with some pigment. And so there I tried scarification with them. So because they have full on scar tattoo sleeves, chest pieces, face pieces, and that was also another rite of passage. But
so
what
do you have a tattoo?
I did, well, I learned two things. Number one, that there's people who have white skin, they don't scar the same way as people with black skin. So if you have a lot of melanin in your skin, you get something called keloid scarring, where the melanin kind of bunches up in that area and the scars look very pronounced. With white skin, it doesn't do that. And so for them, they have very prominent scars. But for me, it didn't even really show up. There was lots of blood. It was there for a few weeks, but then it didn't look like much. And then I got the tattoo sleeve over it. Yeah. Okay. Honestly, I got the tattoo sleeve probably a year and a half after, and I didn't even think about the fact I had scars there, because you could barely even see them anymore.
Could you feel it though when you were getting the tattoo?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. They'd take like a hooked thorn from a tree, and they'd stick it in. They pull the skin out, and we brought them razor blades, and they would cut with a razor blade. They had razor blades there. They were rusty. They were old. They were probably pre-used. But that's one thing you don't see generally in my videos. But I think I might start to include it, is the amount of risk assessment and prep we do for these things. So in both cases, with the nose piercing with the Batonga tribe and the scarification with the Mercy tribe, we bring hand sanitizer. We get fresh tools from wherever we can get it. So like fresh razor blades from the city. We bring all of this stuff. We make everybody wash their hands with hand sanitizer, because like bloodborne diseases are a real thing. And also staph infections are horrible. And that's a real concern out there too. And so we take the necessary safety precautions.
How many days of the year do you have diarrhea?
I have diarrhea now. But that's because I was back home in Canada and was with my family. And my mother has this New Year's Eve tradition where they do a cheese fondue, then a meat fondue, and then a chocolate fondue. And I had fasted the whole day and just bombed myself with cheese, chocolate. And so I think my stomach's still recovering, because I'm usually pretty disciplined throughout the year. Yeah.
Yeah. So in between, like, what are you doing to prepare physically, emotionally, spiritually, when you go on these adventures? Like, what does it look like to be in between the adventures? Do you have good roots? Are you, you know?
The hard thing now is, because originally it was just like me with the camera, vlog style. And you show up and kind of go with the flow. And that's led to some really good adventures. Like we were speaking about in Angola, we found these like pirates who salvaged scrap metal from
walking around and networking, meeting people in the markets and stuff, right?
Yeah, like that's the best travel experiences. The ones you don't find.
That video was insane, dude. He swims, go watch it, but he swims out to this ship, like massive cargo ship that's rusted out in the middle of the ocean. There's waves sloshing around, and you're swimming to go hang out with these dudes that you don't speak English, to strip metal off a boat. Like,
and
it was
got
just
like
nuts.
torches,
It was such an
smoking,
adventure.
like,
I probably would have been there with you, realistically.
I think that's what draws you.
But watching it, I was like, this is fucking insane.
Yeah, it was. But I think that with the background in biology that I have, which allows me to understand, for example, there's not going to be any sharks that are going to get me, you know what I mean? Or the understanding of people after traveling so long, being able to read people fairly quickly, what their intentions are, understanding the world and the oceans, you know, how the oceans ebb and flow and how like all of that knowledge allows me to make very calculated decisions when it comes to risk. I'm a very risk adverse person. But knowledge is the antidote to fear. So the more you know about anything, public speaking or swimming out to a rusty death trap with a bunch of random dudes with torches, the more you understand about people, the world, how everything works, the more you know what's actually a risk. But if you don't know what's a risk and all you've done is watch Nat Geo documentaries about shark attacks and seen terrorist kidnappings in the news, you're going to think it's the most crazy, insane shit in the world.
And how tuned in is your gut too? Because I think at the end of the day, like all the physical things are scary. The rust, you know, the running on in the jungle barefoot, all those things are like, you have an idea of all the, you know, dangers you could physically harm yourself. But it's the people that are the unknown, right?
Exactly.
Like you've got this gut feeling of this person is guiding me into this small town. What's going to happen? Is he got good intentions, or is he going to steal my camera and or worse, right?
That's exactly it. And yeah, you can't control the jungle, but if you're with people who can and you trust them, then you can follow their lead. You know, like I'm not going to walk barefoot in a jungle if the locals aren't walking barefoot.
Right.
Because I might not know all of the bugs and animals and thorn bushes and species and genuses of everything there, but if they're doing it, then I know that I can probably do it. Maybe I'll get a couple little puncture wounds from stuff, but if there's
your soft little white feet are definitely going to hurt a lot more than theirs.
You could take a chainsaw to my feet. I think I'd break the chainsaw.
Really? Can I see your foot?
Yeah.
Is it like just
Reroot
callous?
exclusive.
I don't know.
The clouds.
Oh
feet.
wow, that is impressive.
I can't.
Is it? I
It's
mean,
callous
it's pretty
everywhere.
callous. Yeah, it's actually so callous.
Look at
you
my
can't tell
soft-ass
what's
foot.
callous.
Look, it's all like
Yeah.
yellow and white.
Yeah,
and
My
you're
foot's like
right.
moisturized and
Yeah.
plush.
Are you way more comfortable like being barefoot? Or
I
no?
love being barefoot.
Yeah, same.
Are we
And
keeping them
honestly, 90.
One sock each.
We can go barefoot right now.
Yeah.
Let's go barefoot.
Now I feel like I should go barefoot. Excuse me.
There we go.
What do you say? You got to feel you got to do the whole experience,
Oh, I still
right?
got some cramps from that.
That's what I love about Mike, is that it's, you know, it's one thing to like go and document a tribe, but he is like in there
That's
experiencing
exactly.
it authentic. So I just want to back up just one more question ahead was, is there a situation where you trusted your gut and got a bad vibe and bailed?
Yeah. There's been a few times, but it's generally the people. Yeah. People are good though. Like people are good-hearted,
Yeah.
right? And there's very few people out there who will actively try to harm you. And in all of the places, I've been to some of the most dangerous countries in the world, Mauritania, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, a lot of places that people generally like, Angola. But the people are always extremely friendly there. The governments might not be the best, right? But if you go into a rural part of Angola, for example, people are just curious. It'd be like if we saw a tribe member walking through the streets of where we are now with like a paper map in his like traditional clothing. We wouldn't go steal his shit. We'd be like,
Yeah.
you're very lost. Like, come in
Yeah.
and we'll make you a cup of tea and like let us help you.
Yeah.
And that's the sentiment across the world generally.
It's also
So
incredible
beautiful.
how far simple little things go, like a pack of cigarettes.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
that would get you an incredible experience.
That's for the Angola shipwrecker pirate video.
Yeah.
They were skeptical of us because they don't see tourists. But I had like a little pack of cigarillos, like the small guys, and brought those out, and then we became best friends. And they took us out to the ship and everything.
It's so great. I feel like in our travel experiences, those epic moments take time. Like you have to be in a place and you have to be open
Mm-hmm.
to it happening, right? And then we can trust our gut. But it's hard if you're like on a schedule or you're moving around a lot, or I remember when we met Kara and Nate, they were like, "Oh, we want to do more of like when he just went off with that Moroccan guy into the desert," and it's like, yeah, but that
You can't plan that.
you can't. But it seems as though you can.
Oh man.
Well,
Or
can you?
yeah,
That's
or
probably the
can
biggest
you,
part of your
or-
business. Is just all the prep and like, how do you even go to find a tribe in Africa?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult for sure. But it started to become more complicated when the team got bigger, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to make this a business, and I don't want to be on the road all of the time, right? You can't just show up anymore with a camera and vlog. Like you can, and I try to leave some space for serendipity, but I got a videographer, I got an editor. Like I can't just be gone and not get content. There's a more overhead now. And also I want to be able to make videos that are worth watching and find things and keep up the reputation of finding some of the most rare and unique experiences in the world. And so there has to be a certain level of organization to it all. And also there has to be a certain level of authenticity. And that authenticity is very hard to find, because if you just type in visiting Maasai tribe Africa, you'll find all sorts of tours to the Maasai, right? The guys who wear the red robes, the big spears in Tanzania and Kenya that jump around and used to kill lions and stuff. But that's not going to be the authentic tribe. That's going to be the tribe that has normal clothes on and then changes into their traditional stuff, hides their cell phone, and then jumps for a little bit and then gives you a show, and then it's like a human zoo. And that's the absolute last thing I want to do, is just make it feel like a human zoo. And back in the day, I used to shoot it more TV show style with the videographer, but now I've realized that handheld GoPro is the best way for everybody.
Yeah.
So I've got my videographer. He has a nice Sony camera. He gets some nice portrait shots, the details
So beautiful. Yeah.
of the faces especially. But when it comes down to actually interacting, like for example, going barefoot. So going barefoot is a fun experience for the viewer, fun experience for me as a test, but also proves to them I can hang.
Yes.
And just like the example earlier of someone coming over to your house for Thanksgiving and not having the turkey, you're going to treat them differently if they're not on board. And so if you're there standing 10 feet away being like, oh, look at the tribe. They're doing their tribal food cooking. Oh, they're mixing. But if you're there holding the camera, helping them mix, it's
Eating
funny.
whatever they've
and
made.
you're making mistakes, but you're
Yeah.
trying. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what language you speak. But that is an international human gesture of, I'm here, I'm excited, I want to participate, show me your world. And that is the most beautiful gift you can give to them, yourself, and the viewer, because then you're able to do and create content that is really next level. And that's one thing that I feel not a lot of my peers who do this kind of stuff really nail, because it's easy to go to a tribe, but it takes a lot of, you can't be scared of diarrhea. Because if you're eating like a antelope head that's cooked all right in a pot, is the water from the river? Is it from?
Bro, it's not even be afraid of diarrhea. It's be afraid of diarrhea with no clean water, with your bed is not even a bed probably. Like, I don't think people understand that, some of the living situations that you probably face for many days.
One thing that happened just recently this summer, I have just recovered from 6 months of diarrhea. And it was because we were with a tribe in the Amazon, the Yanomami tribe. And they're really fascinating people that live in the Brazilian and also Venezuelan Amazon. And they live there, they hunt. But one thing that they do every day is they go to war in the spirit world. And so the different Yanomami tribes they're we can call them warring tribes, but they don't fight each other with spears and bows and arrows. They take a hallucinogen called yopo and they blow it through their noses.
No.
The same way you do like rapé, like you blow it into your boy's nose. And there's like, I believe it's like bufotenine and DMT. It's a mix of things. And then they go to war in their minds with themselves and the rival tribes.
Wow.
Have you tried this?
Yeah, we did it with them.
No way.
And the really cool thing hanging with those guys is that we were out hunting and the rainstorm came in and they all started like chatting and they looked really worried. I'm like, oh shit, well, I guess it's going to be a big storm. And my guide and translator was like, no, this storm was sent by a rival tribe. So now they have to go back and they have to send a storm to that tribe too. And so we ended the hunt to go back to then cast a spell on the other tribe and send the bad spirits and over
You had to
their
go
direction.
hit like another DMT nose snort?
Yeah, so at the end of the hunting day, they all sit down and they grind a certain combination of leaves and roots and things. And then they put it in this long pipe. Sometimes they use like a bone of an eagle, like a bird bone, which is hollow. And so you put it in the nostril of you and I just go and blow this explosively.
And you sniff it? Like, are you breathing in?
You don't have to because they put it in there with force, man.
Wow.
And this powder goes up into your nasal passages. There's a very thin blood-brain barrier here, and you just see like an explosion of.
Does it burn?
It burns like cayenne pepper.
Like MD, like Molly? Do you snort Molly?
Yeah, it would burn worse than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would burn worse than that.
Wow, because that's pretty bad.
But the picture being black, and it's probably just as acidic, but it's probably like. It'd be as much as the creatine shot thing we did. So we're talking like
a tablespoon.
A tablespoon of black charred. It's not chemicals, but it's like plants, like alkaloids.
And does it hit right away?
For me, no, but that's why we did like 6 hits.
Oh my word.
And I did 4 hits, but I couldn't. I was definitely starting to see some patterns and how you would on a DMT trip, and the feelings that bubble up. But I couldn't handle the powder, man. Those boys were doing like six shots apiece, and your entire body just
And
gets,
then is it dripping in the back of your throat?
all
You're
down the back
swallowing
of your throat. You're snotting out these big globs of tar. And they start chanting and they start dancing, and you can see them just like conjuring spirits. But the interesting thing is, it's not just fighting with the rival tribe. It's also fighting your own demons.
Of course.
Because they realize that every day the demons will creep up. And sometimes demons do come in your body.
So it's interesting to see, like, you did 4 hits of this and you basically didn't feel much.
I would see like I felt like a moderate amount. Doesn't help the listeners or viewers. I saw some fractal patterns. Let's say if you had like 1.5 grams of mushrooms or something.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand here is a lot of it is just the vibes in the mind. It's the energy and that we're all getting it. Well, obviously there's some like scientific chemical change.
There is, but perhaps for them,
I'll bet you they could do it with a placebo, is all I'm saying.
Like, they believe so strongly that this is what they need to alter their state of consciousness, to alter their energy, to then chase the demons out. And
like even that cot stuff we were talking about, that chewing like a
I've
basketball.
Seen
in Somalia and Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Right. And like you've been chewing all day, like just green grass, and you feel like
like a little lightheaded.
Nicotine.
Like exactly. If you had like 2 milligrams of nicotine, and you're chewing like a basketball size of leaves, and they just sit there in these like cat dens, and they also drink espresso and also smoke cigarettes at the same time. So for us, it was the tobacco? Was it the 3 double espressos? So they just kind of just go. But one thing that's interesting too is that the culture doesn't drink alcohol, but everywhere I've gone in this world, every culture has some way to just tune the antennas differently. Yeah. Even in dry cultures, right? Like, there's not too much alcohol that happens in the Muslim world, but you'll go at like midnight and they're like double espressos and hookahs and all this kind of stuff.
That's where we met our Moroccan boys at the bar. Like, they don't drink, but they drink.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
But it's such a human thing is to just bend the mind a little bit to then be able to, I think, tune into a different plane, a different source of energy, just to, I think, get out of ourselves a little bit, to find a bit more sense in maybe our emotions or the hardships of our lives. But across the world, we all get fucked up on something. Yeah.
Maybe it's our own mind sometimes too, we're just like
on this thought, I want you to tell the breathwork story, because as we're talking about, you don't need these substances. You can use just your mind alone. Or I think breathwork has been a great little fast track for starting to feel a little bit out of your body. And then obviously you had an incredible experience with your grandma.
Yeah. Exactly.
Everyone's been like, Bec, you have to ask him. I'm like, I'll ask him on the pod. I can't wait.
Yeah, I guess I have always been a bit fascinated with air, which kind of sounds weird, but I did a lot of scuba diving. And when you start learning about scuba diving and free diving, you realize how interesting air is and our reaction with it. So let me take a quick segue and we'll definitely go back. But like, for example, like a potted plant. Let's assume this is real. It's not real.
It's so real.
But you plant a tree in a pot. It grows. The soil doesn't go down, right? It stays at the same level. So where does the tree get its mass from? Right? Because you would think like, okay, so you plant it in the earth, and then it gets its nutrients from the earth. And so the plant or tree builds itself from the earth. But then why doesn't the earth in the pot go down?
Well, that's interesting. And the water just dries out. Like, obviously some of it's going to the plant, the water.
I'll give you a hint. I mean, we're talking about it right now.
Energy.
Air. It's the air. So think about that for a second. So that giant tree outside the window here, all its entire mass, the entire huge tree, is made from the carbon from carbon dioxide that's in the air. So it's an incredible thing. And who creates a lot of that carbon? It's us. And here's another question. So when you lose weight, let's say we were skiing and snowboarding and stuff, right? You lose some weight, you burn some calories. But when you lose mass, where does that go? Do you
Yeah.
do you pee it
This
out? Do
guy's
you
like freaking blow my mind. It goes into the air.
you breathe it out?
What?
Whoa.
Isn't that crazy?
Don't you sweat it out?
No.
I guess that's not
It's water. I mean,
fat.
you lose water weight, but as far as like your actual mass,
Wow.
you literally breathe out the weight you lose, because we're all carbon-based life forms. Me, you, the tree.
We're more nothing than anything, aren't we?
Yeah, and there's lots of space in there.
Mhm.
And so we work and we breathe in the air, which is, there's oxygen in there, of course. We use that, and the carbon that we exhale has carbon from our body. It goes into the air. The tree then absorbs the carbon dioxide.
Did I
It
take a
creates
hit of
this
that
giant
DMT or what?
that giant trunk, and then it gives air back. And so if you don't think we're all connected like that,
Of course we are.
isn't
Yeah.
that amazing?
That's amazing.
So air itself is quite a fascinating thing to think about.
Mm.
And I've always been interested in how this is all connected. And that's a very like scientific thing, right? But when it came to this breathwork ceremony at the wedding, so it was holotropic. I had never done it before. A little bit of like Wim Hof type stuff where you get a little bit lightheaded, and I had done some free diving, so I was familiar with how some of the fun things you can do with breath, how long you can hold it, but had never tried hyperventilating for, it was an hour. And so we're there, and there was maybe like 20 of us all laying down, and we're all spaced out, laying on our backs, like spread, and no one's touching anybody. We're all kind of evenly spread. And then so they get there and they start coaching. So it's just in, out, slow in the beginning, and then faster and faster and faster until you're hyperventilating as fast as you can, which in the beginning feels impossible. Like when they first demo it, they're like, okay, you're going to breathe like this for probably 45 minutes. Like, there's no way. I'll try, but I can't hyperventilate for 45 minutes.
Did you set an intention of like, I'm going to give this everything I can?
Yeah. Generally I do. I mean, if I know it's safe, and it's safe, right? The worst thing, and they said this, the worst thing is going to happen. Maybe you pass out, but you're laying down anyway.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen. And so why not go balls deep? Like there's nothing that's bad that's going to happen. The only thing that's it might be scary, right? But again, fear's not your enemy. It can be your friend. So I went all out. And so I was breathing. And in my head, I'm like, I'll try my best. But even just the physical exertion of pumping those lungs so much, it gets tiring. But then something started to like click over, where it started to feel a bit more automatic, and your hands get all tingly because there's so much oxygen in your body. It's coursing through. You're getting lightheaded. You get these little like T-Rex hands, little cramps, and then I started to feel like I noticed that there was like legs on top of my legs and arms on top of my arms. So I thought that the people beside me were all like sprawling out, and we were all kind of crisscrossed.
Whoa!
And so I look over, and no one's touching me, and that was a really crazy realization. Feeling there for a few minutes, like we were all kind of connected. It was nice, and looking over, and there's nobody touching me. So I was in my head, it just felt like we were all crisscrossed and touching each other. And then so I started to realize this is getting quite serious. And so I close my eyes again, like I keep on trying, and you start to feel all of these feelings. Then I feel two hands on my shoulder, like comforting me, and I kind of like look up, and there's nobody there. And then when I look back and there was nobody there, there was a flash in my mind that it was my grandmother putting her hands on my shoulders. And not too long before that, I was trying to get back home because my grandmother had Alzheimer's and then cascaded into dementia, and she was going to die. And I loved this woman. She was the kind of grandmother that if she found out we were coming, she would bake for the whole week. They lived in this little like country house on the top of a hill, and she'd be at the top of the hill waiting for us as we came up, and she was the sweetest woman. And I wanted to be there to say goodbye because I hadn't seen her in a while before she died. And I was traveling from some crazy place like Indonesia, I think I was, trying to get back home, and it was winter. I got stuck in a snowstorm in Toronto, and the connection was canceled back to my hometown in Fredericton. And so I called my mom, like, Mom, the flight's canceled. Like, it'll be there, they say tomorrow morning, but am I going to make it? And my mom's done a lot of work with hospice, and so she's been around quite a few people who passed away. And she said, Michael, she's not going to make it. And I was like, how do you know? How do you know? And she goes, I just know. And I say, then put her on FaceTime. And she said, Michael, you don't want me to put her on FaceTime. And I'm like, Mom, it's my fucking grandmother. Like, put her on FaceTime if I'm not going to make it. And she pans the camera over, and I see, for the first time in my life, someone who is in the last hour of their life, right? Eyes wide open and breathing like like automatic, just like last moments of life, like big like breaths, and just almost like they're ascending to heaven. Yeah. And it crushed me, but I was really happy that I saw it. And I was able to say goodbye. And then the next day caught the flight. She had passed, but I was able to make the funeral. But I always felt really quite guilty that I wasn't there in person to say goodbye, because she meant a lot to the whole family. And a few years had passed, but I still thought about it from now and again. But when I looked up and I saw her face over my shoulder with her hands on my shoulders, and she was saying, it's okay. Like, I get it. Like, it's fine. You know, like that was a really, really healing moment for me. And from there, I was able to make peace with that painful moment in my life, right? And going forward from that, I didn't realize how much it had hurt me until it was purged that way. Yeah. And also didn't realize that experiences like that are accessible just by breathing. As a man of science, that seems impossible. Like, you can take some drugs and you can see some things, but like, what are you seeing? Like, if you're doing hallucinogenics, are you seeing the truth, or is the truth kind of or is something being painted over top? And we can never really know, because we can't get in each other's heads, and there's no answers yet, at least. But I always think, like, if God or the universe gave you that experience that's so accessible, that what they believe is that it does release DMT when you breathe this way for so long, isn't that a fucking gift? Yeah, a gift to be to use as a tool to get through this sometimes very painful experience that life can be. Like, humans are very susceptible to negative emotion, right? Like, we just suck in the criticisms all of the time. And you see that all the time with YouTube as well, where it's like, you'll remember the criticisms far more often than you remember the praise. Oh, that's a great comment. But like the ones that, and so we just sequester these yucky moments, and there's never really an opportunity to release them. And so through that breathwork practice and through some of the things we spoke about before, it allows you to relieve some of this weight. And I was just absolutely floored that you could breathe this thing we do like 100,000 times a day without even thinking about it, and have an experience like that can completely dismantle a very painful part of your mind and your experience. And I just see it as such a beautiful gift. And so from there, I did a few more with different practitioners, and have learned how to teach it, because it's hard. You can say, all right, yeah, bro, go to the Amazon and do ayahuasca with a shaman. There's a lot of steps you got to do before you just jump into that.
For sure.
But breathing, goddamn, you do it every single day. We all breathe. And that's why I got into it, because it was the most accessible, most profound thing, this style of breath work that's available to everybody, that can really deeply heal you.
Yeah. Yeah, we have the power to heal ourselves.
We really do.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That is so beautiful. And I've had there's like so much validation in sharing, because even though that was so real for you, the monkey brain, when you come back into like this 3D world, can try to tell you like, oh, you just, whatever happened, it doesn't matter. That experience was so real for you, you know, and it changed your circuitry, like, for sure. So there's validation in sharing, because then my experiences that have been similar, it's like, okay, no, I haven't totally lost my mind. Like, I've lost it, you know, but I've found a new one, and it's really fun. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. So that style of breath work was very profound. And prior to that too, learning about even like box breathing, being able to just control your breath, that was a major factor in the beginning with dealing with fear. Because when you do get in that kind of fearful state, your breathing, it just gets very erratic and shallow. And if you take it by the balls and notice your breath, and then take deep, slow breaths and hold the top, slow out, hold the bottom, your entire biochemistry changes as well. And if there was one takeaway for anybody who wants to flirt with the idea of diving into some things that makes them uncomfortable, just a very simple breathing technique of, if you feel the fear, just
Let's do it.
in for 4. I'll lead it. So in for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. And then hold for 4. And that shit's better than drugs a lot of the time. Something as simple as that. And it's always available all of the time.
I know. You know, when I started cold plunging, it was like, you got to cold plunge. Everyone's cold plunging. Like, just get in, get out. Like, I don't want to do it. I'm afraid of it. Then I found this meditation. She's amazing. This woman named Kira. And she was basically walking you through, like, you've got to take control of your breath.
Yeah.
And when you get in there, first of all, she has you visualize yourself in there, loving it, being grateful for I think you have to open your heart as well. So being grateful for all the great stuff it's giving you and doing for your body. But she just shows you, slow down, inhale for 4, exhale for like 8 or whatever it is. And when I do that breath in the cold plunge, I feel unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing that could stop me from being in there or ruin my day, or and it's like 2 minutes of your day. You know, we think like these practices have to be like an hour of meditation or whatever, but just take a second, guys. Do your box breathing.
Mm-hmm.
See how you feel.
Exactly. And with cold plunge, it's another very accessible way to encounter panic. Because if you've never done a cold plunge, you jump in there, there is a very visceral reaction to the stress of just extreme cold. And you jump in and you're like, and it feels like you'd never, ever be able to spend another second in there. But again, in that, like, just the constipation of breath, if you just grab it with the breath and you slow it down, everything slows down. Everything. Because you just get spun up. And again, that doesn't have to be a cold plunge. Like, we get spun up any certain way. And we live in a world today where we don't have to sit with ourselves because we got this little contraption in our pocket. Mm-hmm. And any moment where you feel a little bit of something, you pop it open and you get distracted.
Yes. I kind of wanted to circle back on a question I think I maybe asked about the in-between moments. You have this crazy adventure, you come home. How do you integrate, perhaps it's a learning or just the concept that this is existing in the world, whether it's something you've seen or, I don't know, the challenging beliefs we were talking about, right? So you're going to go there, have this experience, and it's going to change you. How do you integrate it in your life? What kind of practices do you have in between your travels? How do you prepare mentally, physically for them? Or are you just kind of like loosey-goosey and fluid? And
yeah. Physically, I take it quite seriously because if we're going to be going to places where there's not much support as far as safety goes, for example, and I do want to be able to keep up with the guys if they're chasing a baboon or something, for example. So there's lots of physical prep that goes in.
Is this where the 100 push-ups a day came from?
Yeah.
How are you doing today? Do we need to hit a couple?
How'd you do yesterday?
I didn't get, I'm 2 days behind right now. So
this
after this,
we'll crush. Exactly what you were like with your 100 push-ups.
Yeah, but I just find with things like that, for example, while it might seem a little, I don't know, silly, but that kind of daily ritual when life just becomes chaotic, and I'm a kind of person that's very easily can get lost in my own head and not get in my physical body. Having something like that where there's no choice. It's not like, did I work out yesterday? Did I work out? Just being like, I wake up and I do this. Right? That has been one of the best things.
Yeah, that mindset switch of like working out, I have to work out, or this is what I do, for me was massive too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not like you said, it's not like, oh, I'm going to work out really hard for a month and then
there's no end to it.
Life.
It's life.
Yeah,
an identity.
Yeah.
And so I had done this 100 push-up thing before, but it was only for 3 months. And it helped me through, especially expeditions and things like that. Even on the Fearless and Far expeditions, I go with my videographer, Ben, and we're like pretty bro-y sometimes. But with that, because we kind of have to treat it a bit like a battle, because you go in, everything can go wrong, flights can get canceled, people can get sick, and you don't exactly know what you're going to be doing, whether you're sprinting through the forest or swimming out to like in the rusty metal death traps. And so being able to go and have this like routine and treat it like going to, I don't say going to war, because I've never been to war, and that's quite a terrible thing. But yeah, routine's very important in my life.
Yeah.
Because in this travel life, as you guys know, like it's hard to have a routine sometimes because things are always changing. Locations, activities. Of course, I'd love some tea. And having that consistency, or whether it be doing 100 push-ups, right? Or thank you, or meditation, or even like reading a book or journaling. For me, if there was a couple things that have helped me through all of the craziness, it's been fitness, even if it's something simple as doing 100 push-ups, because you can knock that out in 10 minutes, and everyone always has 10 minutes. But I've journaled so much. I fill a journal every single year with not just all of my thoughts and feelings, though that goes in there, but just like general observations and things to remember too. But I have to get it all out, otherwise it starts to spin like a tornado, and then then I start to feel like the world's closing in sometimes, you know. And I ask myself often, and I do get asked, what's the quiet time like? Because when you're filling your life with so many peak experiences, especially with television, because I've had the channel and been doing YouTube for about 15 years now, but I did a TV show for 2.5 years.
Emmy award winning, no?
I got an Emmy for Outstanding Host.
Yes.
Let's go.
The kid who was afraid to speak.
Mike
I
Corey.
was just going to say that it is actually unbelievable and so incredible for people listening to hear. The kid who was like, didn't want to be seen.
Yeah, got given the ultimate award for speaking on camera, basically.
Wow.
Which I still feel it's surreal. But and that story, I haven't really done much manifestation, but when it came to getting that, I manifested the fuck out of that trophy. And I had no business winning it. I was up against like
Yes, you did
Martha
have
Stewart,
business. No
Zac
way.
Efron, all these
Wow.
people were in the category.
Shut up.
And I don't want to say first time TV host, because I dabbled with a few different shows. Like I had a show on BBC called the BBC Travel Show, but I was one of a couple hosts. We'd rotate, and I was on other TV shows.
Didn't we do a segment on one of your shows?
Yeah, I think so. Right?
Yeah,
I was
we
like,
did.
we've never met before. I'm like, hold on.
During COVID?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And also, just to pause, this is so unrelated, but I just wanted to thank you because you've sent Eamon a few voice notes that have really impacted him. And you probably don't remember. And
I
that's
don't
what's
really.
You were drunk.
Was I drunk?
Yeah.
No, but
You were saying a bunch of nice things, and it was like, you know, when you're like, it was just like great timing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think even if you were drunk, you opened your heart, and as a man, you sent him a voice note saying like, bro, I love you. And you know, like when we meet, it's gonna, whatever you said, I don't know that I've heard it, but it was really
I
cool.
think just because I respected you guys a lot, and I knew that we would get along when we saw each other, but in this travel world, it's hard to move the chess pieces to get to the same place at the same time. But luckily we made it happen.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of respect for what you guys do, and I can just feel the heart in it all. And you can't fake that, right? You can do a great job on camera. You can do all this funny stuff, but if someone has heart, you just feel it, you know? And you guys have so much heart. You both do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
No problem, guys.
I do want to come back to just the battle with how you live a more normal life, because I think that's something that rock stars often talk about. You go on stage,
You are
and
a
then
rock
all of a
star.
sudden you're in just a quiet hotel room.
Yeah.
And relationships, friendships, you were just chasing a wild boar, and now you're just at a grocery store buying regular meat. Like, life becomes almost difficult to relate to. People become difficult to relate to.
Yeah.
Is that something you battle with?
Yeah. I don't ever talk about it though. Often there's a little bit of a hangover when I come back from trips, and it's easy to get wrapped up in it all. I guess I always say I have to have like some alone time, and I'll like watch Netflix or like play some stupid little video games or something. And I've always tried to understand it maybe a little bit too much. But you're right, you go out and you have crazy peak experiences. And like with the television show, for example, it's even dialed up, because at least with YouTube, you go and maybe you're living with a tribe, but it's not so condensed, because at least you're mostly in charge of the itinerary. But for a TV show, you got like $1 million on the line for a series. Like some of the episodes we did for the TV show, which was Uncharted Adventure, it's like $100,000 an episode to make. And then so therefore every day is just jam-packed. So you wake up and you're like skydiving in the morning, and then in the afternoon you're like tuna fishing, and then that evening you're out like tasting whiskeys with some crazy celebrity, and the next day you go and you're doing something else like downhill mountain biking, and then it's boom, 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 and then you're flying all weekend, next episode, and you come back and you just sit down and it's quiet, and you don't even really know what to do, because during that whole time your mind's so thoroughly distracted, and there's always something to accomplish, the next scene to get, the thing to learn for this, and then when you sit down at the end, especially after expeditions, I guess, and the TV show, it was too quiet. And I had never really dove into that. I'd usually, like I said, get distracted and eat a bunch of junk food and not work out for a couple weeks, and then start to feel like I'm a piece of shit, honestly, and what's wrong with me? And I hit to that point where it's like, all right, dude, like you're being a fucking idiot here. Like you're wasting away. And then with that like small rock bottom, then be able to get back into the routine. And I never really even thought about why it happened until recently. I think why I started traveling in the beginning was to get away. I would have never realized that or thought about that until just recently, when I started to analyze why I am the way I am. But I do think it was to escape, because I never fitted in home, ever. Didn't have a lot of friends, was never, again, the center of attention. And so I didn't feel like again, my home's wonderful. I have great parents. It's beautiful. But at least for me, I never felt like I fit into it all. And then I didn't like how my place there, as far as like my social standing and how I fit in with my peers. And so I think I realized through travel, I can go and I can recreate it differently every single time. Brand new, fresh start, every location, right? So you can become a whole new person. And I think I got addicted to that behind the scenes. And then mix that with this insatiable curiosity to prove to the world misunderstood things. I think deeply I felt I was misunderstood. And that there was something inside that people didn't really see and that they would judge. And therefore, I think I had a lot of empathy towards, for example, a creature like a tarantula, right? Which is scary and weird, but if you learn about the biology of it and how it works, and it's actually not going to bite you, and then you can show how cool it is. And the same thing with countries, going to these places that are dangerous, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, you have a lot of judgments, but then showing the people, showing the core, then you can change. I think now, after doing a lot of reflection, I think it was just a reflection of myself. Me feeling like I was judged and misunderstood my whole life. And then having to go prove to the world that other things aren't the way they seem. They're actually much more interesting and cool. And when it comes to coming back after trips, I would always have a hangover. I still do. But I think that in it, I've realized something about addiction. I haven't really had too many serious addictions that have changed my life, but I find myself very easily distracted. And I've realized that I think one thing people get wrong with addiction is that you're chemically addicted to something. Like maybe nicotine you can get addicted, or there's some drugs. But as far as like eating or alcohol or some like fentanyl or whatever it be, like you're just trying to escape the pain of sitting there, right? And social media addiction, I think if you looked at the stats, I'm sure most of us are addicted to social media in some sense. But that's just another drug that gives you a feeling to escape how you're feeling right now. And then perhaps I'm a little bit too critical of myself, but I started to call myself a coward. So when I'd pick up my phone to like swipe, or I'd like do something that was to distract myself, I'd be like, what are you avoiding right now? Beautiful. What feeling are you avoiding? And if I was feeling particularly spicy, I'd say, you coward. And that helped change it, because I'm always competitive, right? And so me being like, you little coward, what are you hiding from? Come on, like big boy, put up your pants and let's just feel it for a moment. Because I think the misconception about diving deeper into yourself and, let's say, healing some things, it's not about feeling less, it's about feeling more. It's not about stopping the feeling that's coming up. It's about allowing it to come through and really being present with it. And that is a scary ride. It's so
scary.
And it's so easy, especially now. I mean, if you're an alcoholic, you got to buy alcohol and sit there and drink, and it takes, but this little contraption, boom, there we go, distracted. What was I thinking about? Who remembers? I'm watching kids fall downstairs, And so it's just
It's fault.
Ever
Your
seen-
algorithm knows you well, eh? How do you define boundaries? Do you have a balance with it? Like, do you wake up and check your phone, or are you aware? It sounds like everything you said, you're incredibly aware of your emotions, how you're feeling.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not as good as maybe it seems, but I am now aware of when I do it, and then at least I most times ask myself,
Coward.
what am I doing? Like, am I actually doing something, or am I just trying to avoid feeling something?
Do you have that thought process when you actually go to record something too?
What do you mean?
Like, why am I recording this? Am I trying to look cool? Am I trying to connect on a different level? Like Bec's gone so deep with me. Now it's like, why'd you film that?
I think our lives
especially
are
with
blurrier
Instagram. Like, we don't make
because-
money on Instagram, so why do we share on Instagram? Right? Like, am I trying to get a hit of like checking how many people check the stories and how many DMs we got from it? I don't know. Probably.
My default is not posting. I have to make myself post. I'm very happy not posting anything because I think that's just my roots, right? Like, I wasn't ever there to be a big scene, and so even now, like, I'm never one to think in the moment like I want to record. I have to make it very purposeful. There was a point where I definitely was a bit more obsessive over it, but the lines between what was real life and what was for YouTube got very blurred, and I started to get a bit confused. And so, especially back in the days of more like vlogging, making a video a week or a couple videos a week where everything was filmed because everything was a story, that wasn't good for me. So I had to just be like, we're doing an expedition during these times we're filming, and then be able to put it down and just live a normal
Treat
life.
it like a production.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then now we're trying to get a bit more behind the scenes, but I've never been one that's very eager to share my daily life. I try to, but I like to just come at it where it's like big production, big videos, big ideas. And then once the cameras are down, it makes our days easier. It makes the amount of footage easier. It makes the editor's life easier. And that's how I segment the compartments pretty tight these days. Yeah.
You said kind of in passing that your cycle had been, you come out of the shoot and you kind of start to hate yourself and whatever. And I wanted to touch back on what brings you out of it, because I think we can all relate to those, you get in a cycle in your head and it feels like it's out of your control, even though we're creating all the thoughts, is it movement, or what takes you from like that low to more sustainable place?
There's like an echoing voice that starts after a couple days of not being my best self. That's like, move, act, attack. Like, it just starts to get, like, it knows that I have to do something. And I think I'm a little bit prone to like being a bit more depressive at times and getting too in my head and just overthinking. And that always happens when I just sit, right? Yeah. And every single time it feels like, oh, I don't want to move. The second I get some movement. And then same with the 100 push-ups. Even just that, right? I know that it's good for my body. It's great. But just the mental idea of we're going to attack this, and it's an identity, not really a choice. This is what we do. Every morning just sets the day up to be like, today I attack, I move. Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, there's just no action. It's easy to sit back, and there's an experiment I love to talk about called the jam experiment. And it was done like 20 years ago. And the premise of this experiment was they wanted to see how people deal with choice. And so the first phase of this is they put out 3 jams, like a blueberry, a raspberry, and a strawberry. And a bunch of people came in and they said, okay, here's a piece of toast, choose your jam. And they take like a second or two, but generally only a second because they know which one they like. They like blueberry. Boom, blueberry, eat it, good to go. And then they did the same thing with a different group of people, and they gave 20 choices. There was exotic plantain marmalades from Bahamas, and there was
peach,
boysenberry, peach
jam is underrated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All these exotic jams, and people would take like 5 times longer to decide. And then they polled both groups a couple of days later, and the ones with only 3 choices were happy with their choice. Blueberry is my favorite. But with 20, most were like, I wanted to try this, but most were unhappy with the choice that they made. So extrapolating that into the world today, where we get to see all of the options for everything all of the time, whether it be a career path, where to live, choice for a partner, everything. No wonder we can get all swirled up in our thoughts, because we're human species is always looking for the greener pasture, right? Like we were nomads. We go and we try to find things that are better. I'll push the new lands, more fertile crops and more places. And so we're not good with choice. And we have more choices now than ever. And so no wonder we're all paralyzed with fear, not acting, because we get to see, how do we know which one's the right one, right? How do we ever know which one's the right one? It's too many options, too many opportunities. And with that,
we so much information as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was just, because I'm a mom, I feel like I put it into mom brain. And it's like, if I were on social media, I would be observing 15 different techniques for sleep. And where is the intuition in that? Where is you make a choice and then you regret that choice because there's so many other choices. And you're like, wait, I just need to come back to me and figuring out what feels good for us and what's going to work for my child. Like, how does the sleep trainer know that that's what's right, But
so how does that relate to like the dating world? Beautiful guy like you, your DMs are probably full.
Thank you, brother. So for the longest time, I dated girls who were like me, like adventurous and had their own channels, and that was it was a good experience, but it's like almost too similar at times. Especially two people, two channels. It gets a bit like where are we going? Who's going here? And then you don't see each other half the time, and you're always kind of living this honeymoon period almost. And now I'm dating a beautiful girl who just makes me feel like home. I go home and it's like she's like a Labrador Retriever. She's like, just, I come home and it feels like home, right? And so I can go have the chaos of life where we're have diarrhea 3 days in the jungle, eating worms out of the side of a tree, sniffing Cambo or Yopo through
whatever
reeds.
that goddamn powder was.
Yeah. And then I can just come back and just settle into like.
Does she ever like make you quarantine? Like, dude, like you're disgusting.
Okay.
You can't come in the house.
I've given her ticks.
Oh.
I've given her. I didn't give her lice. I'm lice proof, but I brought back lice.
Lice could live in the beard.
Can they live in a beard?
I'm assuming they could. Why
Can you
not?
fact check that?
Can
lice live in a beard?
What else? Brought back bed bug. Yeah. Anyway, so it's hard to avoid it. I think being my
she knows
partner.
who Mike is and what he does.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Can't wait to meet her.
Yeah, you get to meet her in Maui.
We're gonna meet her in Maui
next week.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's honestly a different style of relationship, but there's definitely a very wholesome part that I hadn't really had before. And honestly, distance is tough but in that compartmentalization of travel and home life, it's nice where I can say I'm doing let's say 3 expeditions a year. Each one's going to be maybe like 2 or 3 weeks, and it's very well thought out and organized.
That's way more sustainable. Yeah.
So then I can do things that excite me.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, I know when I'm going to be back, and I can we don't have kids yet. We've only been together for about 1.5 years or so, but I can come back and be that man there and then be this man over here, and there's very clear boundaries what's what.
Do you find you still have like a hangover, as you referred to it?
Less, for sure.
More balance.
Yeah, less for sure. The hangover was mostly when I am going back to nothing. Really.
And what kind of junk food were you talking about like when you went into that?
We need the
Like
specifics.
Doritos?
No.
Candies?
Just chocolate, bro. Chocolate.
Really?
Ice cream.
Ice cream.
Yeah.
Okay.
The usual suspects of a broken heart there.
Is maybe.
Sounds like it.
Also, it's just stuff like that. Basically, I'd come back and after eating whatever, whatever.
And when you say whatever, you literally mean whatever. I have seen you eat.
Like there's a short list of some of the things we've eaten on expeditions.
Let's go.
Maggoty meat in the northern Philippines called a tag, where they boil the maggoty meat with water and you
Sorry,
eat
I just noticed my face was judgmental and I hate that. Look at me catching myself.
There you go.
Like,
you go up there
why am I judging that?
You go meet this gentleman named Christopher and have him cook maggoty pork meat.
I love you, Christopher.
For 8 hours with his boys, and then serve you this delicious meal that tastes like rotten milk, made with all the love in the world on his son's 5th birthday, and the whole family's there. You got to eat the maggoty meat.
Yeah.
You just got to.
Was that the worst? Was that like near the top?
That one was near the top. The top could have been, there was also in the Philippines, shout out to the Philippines for having some of the strangest food on the planet. There was
You tried the balat? That's probably not
yeah,
good.
the fetal chicken egg, or fetal duck egg.
Yeah. They love that.
They love it. Taste-wise, it's okay, but appearance is shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have one called papaitan, which is, I'll tell you what it's called after in English once you hear the story. So I went to this, one of my guides took me to up in the north of the Philippines as well, and he's like, we just finished a really awesome itinerary seeing how the dead bodies there, they carve cliffs and put them in there and hang them from wooden coffins from the cliffs. It's like a really interesting place called Sagada. Up there also there's Wang Od, who is the 109-year-old tattoo artist woman who has the
her.
yeah, so she's up there as well.
Do you have a tattoo from her?
I do have a tattoo from her.
Do
And
we get
she
to see?
It's 3 dots.
it's 3 dots
Oh,
here.
That's okay.
Yeah, but her daughter gave me one on my leg because she's getting really old and she's not doing. She like her daughter will do it, then she'll kind of sign off. She's also very frisky, and one of her favorite things is to grab the junk of tourists who come say hi.
I love
And she
it.
loves because they take a photo with Wang On. You're like, yeah, and then she grabs your junk and you go, and she laughs at the photo.
So did you know it was coming?
Someone told me on the
How
bus.
disappointed would you be if she didn't?
I know.
I'd be so offended. I'd be like, I wouldn't leave yet. I'd be like, well, like, let's finish the job here.
Yeah. We set up for the photo. I kind of stood there prominently, like
Yeah, ready to go.
It's like-
Wore like loose pants and everything.
yeah, sweatpants. So I was primed for the experience, but I couldn't believe it because a local on the bus like, oh, she's gonna grab your penis, and I was like, what are you talking about? And he pulled it up on Google, and there's all these photos of this 3-year-old woman at that time just squeezing cash and prizes down there.
We have so much to learn from the elders. They just don't take life too seriously,
Exactly.
do
Don't
they?
take
They're
life too
like,
seriously.
wow, I'm just going to grab you.
So after a really cool trip, he's like, Mike, you have to try my brother's papaitan. He makes the best papaitan soup in all of Philippines. It is like the honor of our family. My father made it as well, grandfather. My brother makes it. I would love to honor you with like a gift from our family. I'm like, of course, bro, let's go. Like, I'd love to try your family soup. And so we finish this awesome day. We go down into this kind of like dark basement, like, I don't want to call it a kitchen because it's just like, it looks like there's only 2 small windows. There's one like faulty light bulb, these big tables, and you just know there's like animals living in there. Not ones that they brought in. It's the kind of place you'd find. So not the cleanest kitchen. But he sits me at the table, and they've got this big cauldron of this dark green soup. And it smells funky down there. Also looks funky. Takes a big ladle of the soup, puts it in a bowl, and all I see is like intestines and just bits and knobs and this really distinctive smell that kind of smelled like shit. And so I'm like, what, like, tell me more about the soup. He goes, oh, well, actually, we call it bullshit soup because we take the intestines of water buffalo and we don't clean them, and we keep the grass inside because it adds a good flavor and it's a good aphrodisiac.
Bro, they're fucking with you. That's a gringo soup. Did you see them eat it?
They all ate it. They all ate it with me.
Imagine they didn't.
They're
They're
like,
laughing.
they got him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No,
Wow.
so
That's probably, I can just picture what that would
yeah,
smell
like picture a
like.
cow patty you see
Yeah.
on the, and so that and intestines all kind of stirred together in a soupy mixture. And the worst part was that the whole family, like generation upon generation, is there waiting for my reaction to this
God.
bullshit soup. And so you take, like, there was hot sauce and rice, and I just kind of put all that in there.
Hot sauce will make this.
And it's like, it's very good. Like,
How
oh, you can
is
tell.
your gut still going?
That's one of my on my resume.
Yeah.
Strong microbiome.
Yes.
Is on there.
And
Wow.
perhaps even stronger because you've had bullshit soup.
Exactly.
Well,
I
you
do
know.
think there is merit to that. Though.
Yeah,
the
me
more
too.
random shit you put in there,
Me too.
your body, because I think like 70% of the serotonin of your is kept in your gut. It's made in your
Are
gut.
you sponsored by AG1?
No, did they say that?
It was like
I-
a new part of their ad read, and I was like, serotonin? Like, I pictured that in the brain, and I was just like, couldn't believe. I knew like there was a gut connection, but I just heard that fact.
Have you had you need a coffee enema or just a regular enema? You should probably do more enemas.
I've never done it.
You need
He's doing all right.
I guess. There's probably some funky stuff in there.
Actually, so going back a little bit with the Yanomami with the blow in the nose thing.
It's just so casual when we talk about these things. It's so great.
I had diarrhea for months, right? And it wasn't always there. It was off and on. It'd come back really strong for like a couple of days and go away for 2 weeks. And so I didn't know what was going on. But I had
bad.
Yeah, bad. Like
peeing out your butt.
Yeah, like 100%.
Wow.
But again, that's job hazard for me. But I found out that I had a double infection with amoebas and E. coli. And I traced it back to a moment with the Yanomami where we're there and we were hunting, and it's the Brazilian Amazon. So like acai bowls. Big thing in the world, and the IC berries are from there. And we found an actual tree, and so this guy comes up, he takes a machete, he climbs up the whole tree, cuts down the berries. They're up in the trees, kind of like coconuts, but they're very small. Cuts them down. We bring them back, and how they make a juice with them, because there's a big seed inside, is they put all of the berries in like a bucket, like a gourd shell really, and they put some water and they mix it all up and squeeze it, and then filter it out and drink the juice. And so they're really proud of finding it. They hadn't found it in a while, so they're making it for us. And I have got a guide there, like always. And I'm like, hey, so where's the water from? And I'm like, is it from the river, the Amazon River, which is full of parasites? He goes, oh, no, it's not from the river. I'm like, okay, great. So I just assumed that it was boiled, or that we had given them water because we brought drinking water. And then so I'm drinking some of this juice, and I'm drinking like a cup of it, and it's good. And he's like, yeah, it's from the stream. The water wasn't from the river. It was from the stream, which is the same fucking thing. Yeah. Like the stream goes into the river. And I was already like one full cup down of this stream water, not from the river though. And I'm pretty sure that's where I got.
What did the doctors say when you're like, yeah, so I, was out there doing this, and they're like,
it's always I'm a very attractive patient for doctors because they don't ever see the shit.
Yes.
The shit. I've come back with some weird shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bot flies. You know what a bot fly is?
No.
Bot fly is it looks like a house fly, but if you have like a little nick in your skin, let's say a mosquito bite, it'll lay one single egg on the nick in your skin, and that egg will turn into a worm, and it'll live in your skin. And so one time I was doing an adventure in Belize, which is like the deep jungle, and had there's lots of bugs, got bit by a bug, it was itchy, it was fine, and then ended up traveling for a few months and went to Indonesia, got some sakyant tattoos, the tapping tattoos in the back. And it's kind of hard to control the sanitary conditions of that because you're with like essentially an artist, right? And so they do an okay job taking care of the tools, but they don't really clean them per se.
A little Purell on the tip.
You can't. It's like asking a famous painter to, like, you could bring a spear or a thorn, but it's like asking them to paint you something, then bringing your own paintbrush.
Yeah,
you can't.
Don't be rude.
You're like, hey, make sure you wash your brush before you start my painting. You can't
get the full experience, buddy.
They've been doing this for 50 years. You know, like they're literally tapping spells into your body. It's hard to finagle that situation. But I did my research, and it's really hard to actually transfer blood from a straight needle to another. Like if you have a syringe where there's a bit more of a reservoir inside the tube, then you can, but if it's just like a tack, there's not much blood that's spread. So I was reasonably confident that I wasn't going to get anything terrible from getting these tattoos in my back. But here I was with this bump on my body that after 3 months wasn't healing at all. It wasn't really getting infected, right? It wasn't really getting better. It was kind of getting bigger and more red. So in my head, I'm like, I got an autoimmune disease from this backwoods Thai shaman monk dude. And so I was worried I had like HIV or something serious. And so I went in and got tested, and I was fine. And then I was looking at it one day, and I saw a little thing just go, a little white head, and then go back in. And I was excited. Oh. I was excited because I finally knew what it was.
Yes.
And I have a biology background, and I've always heard about botflies, and I'd seen like videos and shows. And if you're like an entomologist, someone who studies insects, there's a big rite of passage. You get one, you let it grow into a fly and escape. And so
wow, that's pretty dope. It's like a little pet you carry with you.
Exactly.
Did you name it?
I knew what it's like to be pregnant for a
Yes,
for a short amount
it's
of
the
time.
exact same thing. Exact same thing. So wait, did it fly out of you?
So
Did you name it?
I did name it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just call them Betsy or her. I don't know.
I like that it's a him named Betsy. That's cool.
Yeah. So basically, I was actually pretty excited at that point because I knew, again, knowing about these creatures, I knew it wasn't going to travel around my body. It stays where it is. I knew I didn't have anything more serious. I knew it was the worst case scenario. It's going to be itchy for a while, then a fly's going to leave. So I was in Bangkok at the time, right? This kind of fly only lives in Central America, South America. And so now that I knew what it was, I went to the doctor's office and I told them that I have a worm, and they lost their minds.
Total quarantine, like freaking out.
It was a modern hospital in Bangkok, and I'm like, I have a little worm in my skin, and they're like, no, a little worm? And I was like, yeah, and they're like, no, it's impossible. And then I show them, and he bring in all of the nursing staff, and this is like the most modern hospital in Bangkok, and they're like, oh my God, they're like taking pictures, and everyone's freaking out.
Oh my gosh.
It's a worm man. Worm man.
Yeah. And then I have one of the highest ranking doctors in the Bangkok hospital Googling botfly removal on Google. And then he's watching some like backwoods medicine woman in a dirty ass grass shack in Belize using a bloody towel to like squeeze out a botfly in the traditional way in the jungle by the Mayans in Belize. And he's like taking notes on a sophisticated pad. And so from this like witch woman who showed how to do it on Google, I don't know why it was there, but then he was able to cut it out of my skin.
He's like, okay, Mike, I am ready for the procedure.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done my homework.
But they all were so grossed out, and it became like a
hilarious.
medical.
So, was there a little bit of a debate to just let it ride? Like,
well, yeah.
because it'd be pretty cool series to like
The
wait
issue
for the
was
fly.
that I was doing the BBC television show.
When is it gonna fly?
Yeah, and it was
Subscribe.
a big ass red thing right here. So it was distracting, and I talk a lot with my hands, and so it was like weeping and pussing, and it just wasn't a good camera thing for a YouTube. Yeah, great, I can like talk about it.
Right.
But the BBC show was like BBC's very formal, and so anything to do with it, like, it just wasn't. I couldn't be like, hey guys, look at my parasite. You know? Welcome to BBC.
Yeah.
I'm Mike, and that's Betty.
Yeah.
Betsy.
Oh, Betsy.
Welcome to
Excuse
the
you.
travel show.
Yeah.
Honestly, you said at the beginning, like, you're just on a mission to experience everything, and you are doing it.
Wow.
My goodness. Thank you for opening your heart and just for sharing so many crazy stories. I think we might find one more in our game Real Talk. We had it at our little house all together.
Before we get into Real Talk, guys, do your favor. Go subscribe to Feelers and Far.
Yes. Oh, this is the content.
Plan
the
a
world
night,
needs.
make some popcorn, brew a
Yes.
pot of tea, and just get lost in the world. This is not like, a travel vlog. This is
It's a
Mike will bring you
documentary.
to places that you didn't even know were on this planet, didn't even know could possibly even exist, let alone the way some of these people are living their life. And you do such a great job of sharing that story.
Maybe don't have anything too heavy to eat, like pizza or
Yeah,
pasta,
popcorn.
because popcorn's good.
Yeah.
Keep it light, because we get
Yeah.
into some pretty raw stuff.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
So inspired by you. Genuinely. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and go deep. And like I said in the beginning, a lot of these conversations are all about the crazy stuff, and I love that, right? But being able to dive into the guts, I think, is really helpful for viewers, for everybody, for even for us to talk really heart to heart. And we had a really hard time not talking heart to heart the past few days and try to save a lot of the main things, because you can repeat it.
Yeah,
but
I've
it's
been
never the
avoiding you
same.
for 3 days. I was like,
Exactly.
don't talk to him.
Don't even look at me.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we're gonna jump into some Real Talk.
Yes, I could use a snack. Let's do it.
A little bit of ASMR for the viewers.
Ooh.
Oh, I got a good hit of that.
No, I can't. Oh, sorry, everybody.
All right, Mike. Here's a deep one. What is the scariest part of your own death to you?
Own death. I think it would just be a shame to die without having fully expressed myself and having fear control me 1%.
Wow.
And I don't know if I can ever truly get there, like the perfectionist 100%, but even just the act of defiance in the face of it all, I would be very disappointed with myself if I died with any kind of should have, would have. and also die without having helped people confront that feeling. I think if there's one gift that I've been able to create is just the ability to understand and be empathetic to that feeling of having gone through so much. And I feel like it would be the greatest sin to not be given that key and first of all, not use it to unlock myself, but then not give it to others to unlock themselves.
Yeah. And I think the thing that stops me, which I'm hearing from you, is that I know that I'm not there yet, but the whole journey of life is getting there, right? So that's why I love the podcast, because it's a way for me to open my heart and show you where I am today. And hopefully in a year's time, I'm like, whoa, I don't even mean that. Or like, I've evolved so much from where I am here. But it was like, I just had this feeling of knowing that that's part of my purpose or what feels in alignment with me, right? Is being raw and like, okay, right now, like, I think I've evolved, but I'm completely ignorant and don't know anything, but that's the journey, right?
And at least having the feeling of you've tried your best, and you can be proud of your attempts, because realistically, you're never going to get all the way there, right? There's so many doors to unlock. That's honestly one thing I've realized over the past couple of years is I'm getting, I think I've learned enough about myself for a while, like we've done a lot. I just need to kind of process this, and then we can continue the path. But there's always so many layers. And
I did want to ask you about your sorry to cut you off, but you said your second ayahuasca journey, you're still processing.
I was thinking about that too. Can we go there?
We can go there.
His eyes just went, oh my God.
It's I mean, that's why we're here. I always try to live by the ethos of like try everything once, right? And I think it's pretty evident in my content. And I think that I had gotten arrogant, and I had done a lot of things that had scared me, right? Like from not being comfortable public speaking to then like getting the Emmy, for example, getting a solo skydive certification, traveling the world. I had done ayahuasca before in Peru and had a pretty deep experience, like very strong visuals. I felt wonder for the first time. Felt awe for the first time. We say like, awesome, bro. But like, what is awe? Like, how often do you feel awe? And I remember looking up during that experience and like feeling awe, looking at something I didn't quite understand, a big globe of energy just above me, like a meteor coming down from Earth, and feeling what it would be like to indeed see that. Like, imagine we're here and we see a giant meteor. You'd just be like fear and awe and beauty, feeling that for the first time. And also seeing a lot of truths about my own lives and things I had to change. And so I went into this other experience just about 2 years ago, confident. I've looked under the covers. I've looked under the bed. Like, I know what fear is.
Do you set an intention for this one versus
how
the last
deep does the rabbit hole go?
Okay.
Was the intention. I want the full experience.
The mystical experience.
I had done it once before, and I don't rush in immediately with anything. I always tiptoe, even with we were doing some skiing and snowboarding. Once I get the feel for it, again, I'll go in 100%. But I always want to kind of test the limits a little bit before I dive in all the way. And so I had done it once quite strong before, and then again at a bit lighter dose with a different tribe in Brazil. And so I felt like I knew what it was enough to then allow myself to go all the way in. And so there was a shaman he'd come up from Peru to Mexico. And I have a really good friend of mine named Arturo, who is a excellent adventure guide, who knows all of the caves and the cenotes and the burial sites for the Mayans. He's an incredible guy. And he told me that this is the most, or one of the most powerful ayahuasca shamans in the world that he's ever met. And he comes up once a year for a couple weeks. His daughter lives there, and he shares the medicine for a few weeks and goes back to Peru. And so I'm like, let's fucking go, like, let's go deep. And he warned me, it's very strong. And the previous experience I had 2 shots of ayahuasca, which was plenty. And I didn't end up throwing up in the end, but had a lot of profound feelings and visuals. And so this time, I'm going to do 3 shots, like I want to see how deep it goes, because I felt like I had seen what demons that I had. So we're in this big yurt in the jungle of Mexico, and there's 15 of us or so, like a very bespoke group of close friends and things. Not of my friend, but of his. And he's this old man with like gray hair, and he has all of these strange instruments from around the world. This man, how he became a shaman, he originally wasn't Peruvian, but he was, I believe, from somewhere in Europe. I think he was Dutch, or he was from France. But 40 years ago, he left the corporate world, went to Gabon in Africa, Central Africa. And there's a plant there called iboga. Have you heard of ibogaine before? Ibogaine, there's a lot of research coming out now for being like one of the most powerful hallucinogens in the world, but also has a lot of very powerful properties to help people get off addiction. Ibogaine therapy is becoming a thing in the U.S. But iboga is one of the only hallucinogens that will literally kill you if you have too much. And so we went with the tribe there, and he did a rite of passage with the shaman in Gabon. And the rite of passage is you have iboga until you go into a coma. And then you die, or you don't, after 2 weeks. And so he did this rite of passage. He was in a coma for 2 weeks. They're taking care of you a little bit, putting a blanket on you if it's cold, but you're unconscious for 2 weeks. Half don't wake up, and half do. And then in that culture, you're allowed to call yourself a shaman.
Wow.
So after several weeks, he woke up and then continued his path through Africa, through the world, learning about plants and medicines, collecting instruments, building instruments, all these different things to be able to eventually find himself in Peru, to be able to go harvest the different vines and plants to create his own ayahuasca, which he calls sky ayahuasca.
Can we get him on the show?
He's an elusive character.
Wow. Oh my God.
Amazing.
But his name was just simply John. I don't know if that's his real name or a given
Definitely
name.
not his real name.
No, I don't think so either.
Definitely not.
But that's what people call him, just John.
Wow.
So for the name and the story, like he might not seem like legit, but he is the most legit. Like he's gone through.
Yeah, because there's a lot of fake shamans, right?
For sure. He
They
didn't just
put
go
up,
to
put up a sign on the side of Mexico, shaman here.
do like some kind of online certification process.
Yeah, if that.
So he knows his shit. And he's obviously not afraid to go deep himself, considering he put himself in a coma for 2 months or 2 weeks. I show up. We got this group of people. He's there in the beginning. He's explaining in Spanish about who he is, why he's here, a bit about his story. Again, there's a few people like myself who weren't his close friends. And then we go around, and it's the time to take the medicine, and he pulls it out, and he has a little shot glass in the front, and you go one by one, and you take a shot of the ayahuasca.
He's got it pre-mixed, like it's in a bottle?
Yeah, yes. I paused because there's a story there that I probably can't tell on the podcast about how it enters and how that whole, because it's hard to travel with ayahuasca, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Maybe we have to cut that out. But yeah, so he has it all pre-mixed, basically there, and in these containers. And so you take a shot, and there's candles. And the interesting thing is you got this big yurt, and you have these giant like spider hand shadows going across the top as the glass gets passed along the candles.
Whoa.
And he goes and he blows on it. And I swear to God that when he blew on the ayahuasca to bless it, the wind picked up outside, which was those things. It's like, okay, I'm a scientist, but like, what are the odds of that happening? Maybe they got guys out there with like fans or something.
Sure, maybe.
But just a bit coincidental. We go around. We all have a shot. It tastes like gasoline, basically like a planty kind of earthy gasoline, very, very strong. We all take a shot. The light goes out. After about 15 minutes, people start throwing up, very natural part of ayahuasca. Then they start playing these beautiful instruments from around the world. And I have one, I don't really feel very much. So after about an hour, the bar is open, he says. And in these ceremonies, he says, after about an hour and a half, it's open for as many shots as you'd like. And then about an hour after the close of the ceremony, which is like 2, the ceremony starts around 6, then they'll close the availability of ayahuasca. But in that period of like 4 or 5 hours, you can have as many shots as you want. So I had one, didn't feel very much. Had the second shot and knew I was probably going to feel quite a bit. And so I did, and I sat there for about half an hour, and you can see like the spiral starting to sit in the darkness. But the interesting thing about ayahuasca is like mushrooms you do in the daylight, and you're interacting with people, and there's stuff going on, there's nature. But ayahuasca, you sit in the dark. And so imagine taking mushrooms and just like high dose mushrooms and just sitting in the dark. That's a whole different kind of trip.
Also a vibe.
Oh, I
Done
imagine it's a
that,
vibe.
yeah.
Yeah. Whole different experience for sure.
Yeah. Much more inward.
Because you can't distract yourself.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, I'm 2 in. I'm starting to get the feeling. At a certain point, you just kind of want to settle into your little nest of blankets and ride it out. But I'm like, I want to do 3. I have to take a piss. I'll go up. I'll take my 3rd shot, and I'll go outside, and I'll take a quick piss, and I'll come back in, and I'll settle in. So I wander up there, and I can still walk pretty well, and I see the shaman. He's kind of like glowing with fractals, and I look at him, and he looks at me, and I take the 3rd shot, and I wander out to take a piss outside. They have this beautiful stone walkway with candles, and it goes off into the jungle. And I just take a few steps, and I go to take a leak, and I'm leaning against a tree, and it's like it's not coming. And so I'm like, come on, because I'm feeling a lot, right? And the feeling is starting to come. I'm trying to piss, I can't piss, and I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta puke. And so I go and I go to puke, and I like gag, and then I have to pee. So then I take a piss, and then I throw up. And then I have to pee again. So and I'm kind of like doing this weird thing. I'm not peeing on myself, but we're getting pretty close here, right?
Are you just leaving your dick out at this point?
Yeah,
Like,
I'm in the dark, like on a knee in the jungle, like
Oh
trying to
my
take a
gosh.
piss and puke at the same time. And then so after that whole purge is over, I get up and I turn around and I have no idea where the fuck I am anymore. It's literally
You've just been stumbling.
spinning patterns. I can't even see the front door to the, and I'm maybe 5 meters away from the front door. I actually was, because the next morning I could see, but there was an entire world, galaxy between me and the front door of my safety.
Do you even know if you're standing?
I can tell that I'm standing, but the ground looks, I can't tell. I can just barely see my hands because it's dark, but there was candles, but everything's starting to turn into a big mess of patterns. And so I'm stumbling.
Are they geometric?
Yeah, like a kaleidoscope. Like mandalas and things like that.
Fibonacci.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I have my little blanket that I had brought it with me because it was cold. And so I'm like, no, I know it's this way. And I stumble and I still can't see it. And I look down and there's this writhing pile of what kind of looks like snakes. But I'm like, no, it can't be snakes. It must be like leaves. And so I just lay down my little booty out of my blanket and I just curl up. And I remember trying to open and close my eyes, thinking I couldn't open and close my eyes, then realizing, oh no, I can't tell the difference anymore. And that's when I was out in the ocean, hanging on to a rocket ship with my pinky finger.
I'll bet your dick was out still.
I don't even remember.
I guarantee it.
I don't remember. All I remember is being like, this, like you've had too much. And then this booming, I want to say it's a voice, but it was more like a realization of this thing that came in, and it was like, oh, you stupid little mortal, you think you can dabble, you think you could handle all this? Well, here is the fucking universe, enjoy. And the whole world is ripped open in like this blinding light. And I remember feeling this absolute primordial bone shattering terror. Not like, oh, I'm a little bit scared to speak in front of, no, like my soul was shattered with the fear that I felt.
Whoa.
I didn't know it was possible to even feel half that much fear. And that sent me into, I mean, panic sounds tame to me, because I maybe it's because I had no idea where I was. If I was even I didn't even know anything anymore. I had no grip on where I was, who I was. I was a cork floating in a cosmic ocean at that point. With this bright light that could not see me in the sense of like visually, but just knew everything about everything I'd ever done. It knew everything, every little granular detail about how everything works and me, and there was nothing that could hide from this light. And I remember feeling like I was then seeing how the world worked, but it was like showing the blueprints to a rocket ship to an earthworm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Where it's like, I don't even have the understanding of paper, so how the fuck am I ever gonna know how to get to space? You know what I mean?
1000%.
I don't have the senses in my skull to begin to understand what I'm seeing. That was the difference in intelligence, basically, of perception. And just feeling, and where it gets a little strange, and I don't want to say dark, but we had done a lot of adventuring, Arturo and I, the previous weeks. And we had done a lot of deep cave exploration in the world of the Maya there. And so they're in Yucatan and Belize and the Yucatec Maya. And we had gone down, done a rappel into a cave that then you have to walk 3 hours through an underground river to find a sacrificial site where there is a real crystal skull. So several hundred years ago, no one knows exactly how long, maybe 1,000 years, the Mayans had brought down a sacrifice, had removed the head from the sacrifice and placed it deep underground. And due to how limestone works and how the water filters through and it's very humid, the skull had actually become crystallized with the same crystals you find in caves. So there's an actual, like, Indiana Jones style crystal skull deep in this hidden area of Belize. And that was a very interesting story because you can still see the pieces of obsidian that they would have used to, like, bloodlet themselves. Wow. The Mayans were big into bloodletting. They would either use obsidian or one crazy thing they do to let blood is they'd take their foreskin, puncture it with an obsidian blade, and take a spiky vine and run it through their foreskin to get the blood.
All in the belief that letting out this blood is healing.
For them, it would be an offering.
Okay.
Yeah, an offering to the gods of the underworld.
Why would they choose their foreskin?
If there's a lot of blood down there, I guess.
Oh, they'd get a
They do
boner
their tongue.
and do the foreskin?
No, I don't know. I haven't tried it myself.
Wow.
But they'd use the women use their tongues, like put a hole in with the obsidian and pull a spiky vine through the tongue, and they'd also use their foreskin.
What are we talking about right now?
We're gonna get back to the ayahuasca story, but I'm trying to put into perspective what we had just come from seeing, right? So just like a week or so ago, we had just gone from like a sacrificial site, right? We had seen the crystal skulls, we all this stuff, and learned a lot about Mayan sacrifice. So the Mayans didn't have ayahuasca, but they had different versions of hallucinogens, and they'd get jacked up in this shit, and they'd go underground where it's all dark, and they'd do the rituals, and they'd talk to the gods. So here I am sitting in front of God, a god, the God, and I have this feeling of all I can do, the only gift I could ever give would be to sacrifice myself to you.
Whoa.
That my little mortal body, I am so insignificant, and not in like a suicidal sort of way, but just in like you are all of this, and I am just this little mote of dust, and the best thing I could ever do is just give my life to you. And that would be the most beautiful, powerful gesture, the biggest expression. My entire purpose would be just to give myself to you. And that made me understand a lot about that culture, where they would sometimes sacrifice themselves, or somebody else they'd give a lot of hallucinogens to and then sacrifice that. And I could understand how in that mind frame, how you could feel like privileged and excited to be able to give yourself to the great unknown in these big ritualistic ceremonies. And so I'm face to face with this God, feeling so insignificant, feeling like just take me, basically. Not in like a kill me sort of way. You know what I mean? Just but
out of fear, or is the fear settled now?
The fear.
Maybe it's out of love.
The fear settled at that point. So the one going back a little bit, the one thing that kept me, dare I say, sane, is that the only thing I could feel was my breath. Oh, that in my heart. My heart was slamming like a helicopter taking off, but I could still feel my breath. And that was the anchor that allowed me to ride the waves. And also, the shaman had said, don't fight it, surrender. The more you fight, the more it'll fight back. Surrender. So here I am, like little Mikey boy with his booty out of his little blanket, maybe with his dick in his pants, maybe not. Thinking like, every trip has an end, Mikey. I was calling myself baby, like every trip has an end, baby. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Every trip has an end. Surrender, surrender, surrender. And then through that, I found the peace to be able to find the love of it all, to be able to surrender myself to God, right?
Yeah. No wonder you were like, I'm still processing.
Yeah. And then after, going back and like when I came, I guess the whole trip, I realized it lasted about, that high, the peak lasted about an hour and a half, because after I could check my watch when I got back to the the yurt, once I realized I wasn't a cork out in the ocean. it was the most profound thing that's ever happened, and just challenged everything. Because again, being agnostic or atheist, like, God, maybe, who knows? But then actually having an encounter with something that made me feel undoubtedly that was the creator of the universe, not some dude with a white robe and a staff, but just even like a force, just a ball of light, right? Unnamed, but all-knowing, makes a lot of actually sense go into a lot of the things you hear about near-death experiences, or like surrendering yourself to God. Like these are things that I've heard my whole life but never really understood, but then actually felt in that moment. But where it got difficult is that's such a foundationally transformative moment of my life, where the roots of how I perceive reality then changed. First of all, I didn't know you could get that scared. Number two. Number one, I was completely enveloped in a world I couldn't perceive, right? So you start to lose trust a little bit in your perception, because you didn't realize how deep the fear could go, and then you didn't realize that you could just literally lose sight of everything. And then, oh, maybe there is a fucking God after all, and that it's not all just like you go into the ground and you're dead. And so that took a long time, and I would say I'm still processing it now. One thing that I experienced quite a bit that I've only briefly touched on is there's something that's called depersonalization, which is when someone has a very stressful event, they start to live an existence where they don't feel like they're living their life anymore. And so for me, because it was so difficult and it kind of induced this baseline stress and anxiety, I had a hard time settling back into my body again. So I thought I was stuck being high for a long time. And it wasn't until I was watching this Post Malone interview, I think it was on Rogan, where he talked about smoking a bad joint once and never feeling the same again, and being stuck high. And then he felt like life was a movie, and that he felt that he was just existing as a character, that he was removed. And I was like, holy shit, that's exactly what I've been dealing with for months and months and months now. And then so I got into, it's a very common thing that if you have a traumatic experience, especially on psychedelics or even a very deep weed experience, that you have like some kind of panic attack, and you can't really settle back in because perception gets so broken. And then getting back into your body takes quite a while. And that happened to me. And but an interesting point as well, going into the love over fear. It's very easy to be fearful when you don't trust reality anymore. Yeah. You can exist on autopilot, but you can't feel anything because you're detached. And it's a very normal human response to trauma too, to detach themselves and become numb. And usually it happens, let's say there's a car crash, it's horrible, your adrenaline kicks in and you can get things done, and then you'll come back and feel. Or with the death of a loved one, for example, too, you can kind of just be in shock and you'll come back. But some people don't come back and they get stuck there. And so just the realization that this is a normal thing that happens. And also it can be a tool, because I remember when I was first learning how to speak, I was so scared I would come out of my body. And I'd feel like everything was a dream, and I'd do like an okay job. And then after, I'd kind of feel like I blacked out or something. And I'd come back and I'd do an okay job. And that was I think the only reason I was able to do my job when I felt that much fear, is because my body couldn't handle it, or maybe it exactly knew how to handle it, took my mind away from my body, allowed me to deliver what I needed to deliver, and then brought me back together at the end. So it's a beautiful tool to be able to do things that are scary. And then so me coming to terms and kind of getting out of this anxiety condition, honestly, was me loving the fact that my body does this miraculous thing to keep me safe and to be able to do the job that I did, because I would have never, for example, ever gone down this path and like got the Emmy and had the YouTube channel if I wasn't able to do that. Yeah. And you realize very quickly, once you start putting these things together, that love is the solution to everything. All of those feelings, all of that grief, all of that anxiety, all that depression, the solution every single time is just love it. Because it's there to help. Your body's not trying to destroy you.
Bless it, you know?
Your body's just doing its best to help you. And the more you get afraid of what it's doing, because it can feel very scary, then it just doubles down, right?
I want to do one more, because I think it's interesting, just based on what you said. If you could change one thing about the world, what would you change?
God, you're blowing my mind, though. How's he going to keep blowing our minds?
I got popcorn on my tea.
More love.
I really don't like the way we're going with. Let me take it back a bit. I love how tribes live simple lives. You go, you hang with the family, the grandmother's there, you're there, your uncle's there, everyone takes care of everybody. There's a community. Every day you go out, you hunt or you gather. Everything's always together, happy, laughs, bad things happen. Everyone's still laughing. I see there's rites of passage, there's traditions, there's rituals, there's music, there's singing, people are expressing themselves. I see that and I love that. Tribes don't live perfect lives. You know, there's like the high child mortality rates, there's lots, but as far as how humans should live, I get so enamored with that. And I just come back to reality and this reality, and I just see us going further and further and further away from that. And it's no wonder we're getting it's so difficult for us to be able to get through emotions because we all do it ourselves, and we've distanced ourselves so much from that, right? And I think as well, every day there is a challenge. It's like get some food, get some water, you know, like rebuild the village, and there's a purpose and a mission to every single day, working together for a cause. The human mind needs those things. It needs community and it needs a problem to solve. We are expert problem solvers. That's why we're the only creature that can be on every single continent. Like we live everywhere. Even Antarctica, there's people living there right now. No other creature can do that because we are expert problem solvers. Work together, overcome every obstacle, every tsunami, tornado, the cold, the heat, like we are expert at problem solving. And so now when we're living in a world with the fewest problems ever in the modern world, and we have this brain that just always needs to have something to work towards and a problem to solve, no wonder we're unhappier than ever because we've got this crazy hamster in our head that needs to run every day and solve problems, and we don't give it any. And so it's just trying to over survive, basically. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's what like people have these psychological problems. We're just over surviving. We're used to having like obstacles, and there's no obstacles. We're just trying so hard, and we're over surviving.
Yes. And there's nowhere for that energy to go because you don't actually have to go out and fend for yourself and get the food. And, you know, like we're revving it up and it's just beating itself against itself as opposed to like the energy going out, which enters us into like, you're out of homeostasis, here comes disease, you know?
And I love technology. And I like now the AI stuff is really exciting. I don't know, there's no other path. We can't come back from it, right? There's no like, unless there's a World War III or like a solar flare that wipes out we're going to keep going down that direction. And it's exciting, but I just worry.
Yeah. You know, I know we talked about like being in the bubble, like when you're open to spirituality or whatever, you sometimes find yourself consuming the content. So you think everyone's kind of thinking this way. I hope that's not the case, but I do feel like we're waking up. I think we're waking up, and I want to live in that space of like finding community again. And, you know, it's something we seek so deeply. And
Mike, I could talk to you for hours, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like you have a hard stop though.
Yeah. Now.
But just to come back to that question, if I gave you the magic wand, and you could just be like, boom, let's change this, what would you do?
I mean, very simply, help people understand that those dark areas of their lives are exactly where they need to go. There's a quote by Joseph Campbell that's the cave you fear to enter hides the treasure that you seek.
Wow.
And that's exactly how to live life. It's scary in there. It'll feel like you're not going to make it. It'll feel like it's impossible. But every single great person, and I know you guys know this very, very truly, that the darkest areas, if you can show up there with your torch of love and accept it and find the meaning in it, in the suffering, then the world, again, gives itself to you, right? Bows down and says, here's everything you've ever wanted. And we just don't, I wish the world could see that.
Yeah.
I wish the world could just know it, not necessarily even act, just know that that's where everything they want hides, in that dark cave.
And you can start by booking a retreat with you.
That's right. Tribal rites this March. That's
Is that what it's called?
Tribal rites.
Amazing.
Taking the rites
Yes.
of passage that I've picked up around the world from
beautiful.
shaman and witches and elders, and putting them all together for 1 week in Mexico. In 2025, it's March 6th through 11th. Also, will
Spots
be
available? Should we be going to the rites of passage?
Yeah,
Yes.
can-
there are spots available. We sold out the last one. We're going to sold out this one for sure.
Of course you will. Wow. I am so in love with you, Mike McLeod Corey.
Good research, guys.
Thank you so much for your time, for your heart. It was
a big decision for us to come and take the show on the road. And, 5 minutes in, I was like, holy shit, this was so worth it. Just to sit down and have this conversation. It's been incredible.
As a human, you know, like it's just been so impactful for me. So
and I reflect the same feeling. These conversations are the best kind because you really get to feel like you know someone, and also you can reflect back and forth. And we could just speak about this stuff forever because there's so many layers to understand, and we've all done our different work and have different sources of inspiration and knowledge, and it's just such a beautiful gift to give each other conversations like this. So thank you guys. It was so wonderful.
Woof.
There's so much more to Mike Corey, and it'll be coming soon on the show.
Yeah, maybe
so
part
diarrhea
two,
and
part three.
baboons.
Yeah. We haven't even talked about the places you've slept and all that stuff. So anyway, go follow Mike, and we love you all. Appreciate you. Peace.
Thank you, guys.
Wow, dude.
What a wrap.
We did it.
Wow. Is it awesome having a live show? We should
Live show.
do a live show.
That's the next step.
We get the laugh track in